Italian Michele Scarponi among the GC hopefuls that was banged up in the Stage 7 crash. Heinrich Hausler, number 193, the teammate of Tyler Farah. And all the riders today headed towards this finish on stage number 8. A steep ramp of just about 28% to the final 500 meters, and many are calling it the steepest finish we have ever had to a Grand Tour stage. Starting in yesterday's finish town, heading north to a new finish town for the Vuelta a Espana this year. That lies just 30 miles outside of the Spanish capital of Madrid.
Today's stage takes them 110 miles. Another pretty hot day, but not quite as hot, so the temperature's coming down just a little bit. The riders will appreciate that. But it's up and down all day long. A great day for a breakaway to put pressure on guys, but there's some very sharp climbs in the race, especially at the finish, to really bring things to a head.
Let's see what those climbs look like in visual form. And the Cat 1 comes basically right out of the gate.
That climb about 12 miles in length. It averages just over 5%, but it's a pretty harsh awakening to the riders for the day. Then they have a couple of Category 2s, but notice all the other climbs that are not categorized, as well as the finishing climb. Officially, the race says it's 20%, but other people are saying it's as much as 28%, the steepest climb ever used in a stage race finish.
And now we pick up the action live. A four-man breakaway with a lead of just inside of 6 minutes on the main field and just over 70 kilometers left to race on stage number 8 at the Vuelta. Heinrich Hausler, Matteo Montaguti, Julian Pouchard, and Adrian Palomares, the four riders. Threats, the highest placed rider is over 40 minutes back of our overall leader, Sylvain Chavanel, who is spending his 4th day in the red jersey.
This is Pouchard. Breakaway yesterday. In fact, the last man caught after attacking his breakaway mates late in the race. Heinrich Hausler in the black and white of Garmin Cervelo.
And this is the chase behind those four riders that's been led for the last hour or so by Katusha, because of course they want to get their GC man Joaquin Rodriguez in position to win his 2nd stage of the race. Road ID stage profile puts the leaders on the lower slopes of the first of the 2 Category 2 climbs.
On the front for the Katusha squad is one of their national champions. That's the national champion of Belarus, Alexander Kushinsky. He's a new recruit onto the squad, and he's been doing quite a bit of work here today. In fact, that entire Katusha team has.
The leaders are already on the lower slopes of the climb. And this peloton chipping away at the lead. It was up close to 8 minutes at one point, now down to 5:42 and dropping. I mentioned that Tyler Farah has abandoned the race, so one of the marquee sprinters gone from Garmin Cervelo. Oscar Freire, another of the top sprinters, has also pulled out for the Rabobank team. Freire was certainly in the mix for a stage win yesterday, just missing out. So losing some of the big-name sprinters here as we begin the 2nd week of racing.
Freire picked up 3rd yesterday. Cavendish, another one of the marquee sprinters who's out of the race. He struggled every day from the original team time trial, day number 1. A few days in, he pulled the plug. His teammate Matt Goss is out. So we've lost several of the fast men of the bike race so far.
Carlos Sastre's name written on the road. The race today passing through his home region. So a lot of banners, a lot of paint out there on the roads and alongside where the riders will be navigating here this afternoon.
And on the front, the Italian Matteo Montaguti, the 27-year-old for AG2R Le Mondial, and he's actually in his 1st Vuelta. Originally, he started out racing on the track, Steve, but he's transitioned over the road. Not a lot of big wins, but he had a couple last year on the road. 10% here on this Category 2 climb, just one of the many obstacles the men will face during today's race. And in fact, this is one of the courses that Jorito Rodriguez, Joaquin Rodriguez, as he's also known, he says today may be one of the more decisive days of the entire bike race, more than the big mountain finishes.
Well, I think these next three are certainly going to play a pivotal role. We have that steep finish today. We have our second summit finish tomorrow, and a long individual time trial on Monday, just prior to the first rest day. So these next 3 days really will provide a window into how the GC is going to take shape over the final 2 weeks of the race.
And some cobblestones as well for these guys, as well as some rough roads.
So the 4-man break. 5:39 ahead of this field, and just about 70 kilometers left to go on a sunny and warm Saturday at the Vuelta.
It's a delicate balance.
4 leaders inside of 1 kilometer to the summit of the Cat 2. This is the back end of the field, just over 5 minutes behind. Just inside of 70 kilometers left to go. And for the 8th straight day, barely a cloud in the sky. Temperatures hovering right around 90 degrees as the heat continues here in the Vuelta.
Going up these climbs, even though the temperatures are only in the low 90s, and I say only, it's still very hot because you don't get that wind to cool you down, so you don't get the evaporative cooling, and you're just baking out there.
Katusha in control at the front of the field on the climb, trailing the 4-man breakaway by a little over 5 minutes as they approach the summit of the Cat 2. They've already gone over the summit of the climb. Matteo Monteguti, the 27-year-old AG2R rider, the Italian in his first Vuelta, got maximum points over the crest of the climb. And now everybody working together back on the flats. There is Heinrich Hausler for Garmin Cervelo, 27-year-old who turned pro back in 2005, and that very same year picked up his first stage win at the Vuelta.
Hausler's coming back from a couple of pretty difficult seasons due to some bad crashes and injuries, and really trying to get back the form that he showed a few seasons ago when he was on such incredible form. In 2009, won a stage of the Tour de France. He was second in Milan and San Remo, as well as the Tour of Flanders. But the last year and a half, not been so good for him.
It's a very difficult stage, number 8 at the Vuelta a Espana on this second Saturday of racing. This is the main field in pursuit of a 4-man breakaway. They're trailing them by 4.5 minutes with just over 63 kilometers left to go. Our 4 leaders have gone over the summit of the first of 2 Category 2 climbs. The main field still on their way up. That second Cat 2 will summit with just over 30K left to go, and then waiting at the finish. A slope of almost 30% in the final 500 meters that is going to have a heavy impact on the outcome of today's stage and likely further shape the general classification.
Especially with that general classification being so tight at the top. Time bonuses are big in Spain. 20 for the win, 12 for second, and 8 for third. Add that to any gaps, and we will certainly see some changes today.
Some of the top sprinters pulling out.
And a crash here on the climb.
We have an issue here going around that left-hand turn.
Motorcycle stuck in the middle of it as well. And while those guys are all chasing back on, the guys at the front still having the steady tempo. So chasing back on, very difficult.
Mentioned the abandons. Tyler Farah of Garmin Cervelo. He got the worst of the crash near the finish line yesterday. Started today's stage, pulled out after 30K. Oscar Freire of Rabobank, who was sick earlier in the race, but started to come around in the last few days. He is also abandoned.
As well as Mikhail Golas, the Polish rider that Farah collided with inside of 100 meters of yesterday's finish.
All right, so now 4 minutes, 43 seconds is the margin between this main field and the 4-man breakaway. 2 climbs down, 1 to go.
A little hard to tell exactly what happened there, if someone fell down or maybe someone just threw a chain and just caused a little bit of a log jam in the middle of the road, and everybody gets stuffed up. Antone continues to ride at the back a lot, and the only thing I can think of is that he's hoping he's going to come around, because if he's not going to come around, he's probably better off just to be out of the bike race.
That could be too late by the time he comes around. That's the problem.
This group still trying to get back on after the climb. Slight little bit of a wind out of the right, so they're lined up, echeloning across the road, and the car trying to stuff itself up in there as well. Always have to be on your guard in these bike races.
So 4.5 minutes as the main field is still being led by Katusha, solely in support of Joaquim Rodriguez. Even though Daniel Moreno actually sits a little bit higher than Rodriguez on the general classification, and he has the lead in the King of the Mountains classification, they know it's about Burrito at this year's race. But it does help to have a guy like Moreno who's been riding well, who's shown the ability to climb with the best of them. He's won a stage at the race so far. They know Rodriguez is their best shot at a stage win today and their best hope for the podium as the race goes on.
It's really good when guys have clear-cut goals on the team. It's much more difficult when they have split ambitions.
And looking up ahead for the 4 leaders. And here we go. Matteo Monteguti at the front of the train right now. Adrian Palomares of Andalusia sitting second. And the Cofidis rider Julian Fichard with Hausler hanging on at the back.
Fichard in the red there, the car coming up to him. Last year at the Giro d'Italia, stage number 5, he was in a 3-man break, and within 1 kilometer of the finish, they only had a couple of seconds on the field, and they stayed away. He ended up taking second on the day, so he knows that sometimes these breakaways can work.
Now Fouchard was in the breakaway yesterday, and he was the last man caught. He attacked the remainder of the break late, was out there by himself, and was the last man to be scooped up before the field sprint.
But then found out that he had more problems that were lingering.
Our 4 leaders in front of some huge crowds. Just over 40K left to go, and they are about 10K away from the summit of the final climb of the day, a Cat 2, the Alto de Santa Maria. Las Naves del Marquez is the town they're riding through. In front of the huge crowds that continue to come out this year in support of the Vuelta, with the race coinciding with the Spanish summer holidays here in late August. Huge pine forests around this town in this region of Spain.
Yet again, another day of a lot of small roads, a lot of bumpy roads with holes in them. These were the things we were talking about yesterday, how you get a puncture at a bad time in the race and it takes you out. You hit one of those holes, and that's exactly how Taylor Phinney punctured yesterday in the crosswind. He hit a hole, and all of a sudden, he was done with the race. Back chasing for the rest of the day.
The 16th century Palace of Magnolia up on the hill in the distance, just off to the left of the 4-man breakaway that right now is being led by Heinrich Hausler of Garmin-Cervelo.
And I don't see a single one of those guys' heads turning left to have a look at it either, Steve.
Now at 66K an hour, you can quite understand that.
They probably don't even know it's there.
Trying to hold on to their lead as long as possible. He was up close to 8 minutes at one point today. Now down under 4 as the chase continues from the peloton. For a long time it was led by Katusha. Team Sky now helping out. As the field is all together here, rolling along, chasing the 4-man breakaway, headed towards the final climb of the day. Our 4 leaders rolling along at 3:20 ahead of the field. 37 kilometers left to go in the stage. Just about 5 kilometers or so away from the summit of the final climb of the day. They did a Cat 1 earlier, followed by a Cat 2 and another Cat 2 upcoming here. Heinrich Hausler has been leading the way on this little downhill, over 70K an hour for the Garmin-Cervelo rider. Matteo Monteguti of AG2R sitting second. Andalusia rider, Adrian Palomares third, and Julien Fouchard, the Frenchman for Cofidis, the last man in the four-man line.
Palomares actually started his season way back in January, racing in Argentina, the Tour de San Luis, taking third in a stage there. Tells you how long the racing season of these guys is.
Our Road ID stage profile as the leaders just about to start that final climb of the day. But that is not the last time the road will go uphill. As you noted, the jagged points on the profile the rest of the way. It's the final categorized climb, but still several ascents and the finishing ramp of almost 30% right at the finish inside the final 500 meters at the finish in San Lorenzo de El Escorial.
Say that 5 times fast. Katusha still heading up the peloton. They do not hide their intentions whatsoever. All day long, been driving the front.
That's Jurgen van der Walle, Belgian for Omega Pharma Lauder.
Banged up riders after that crash yesterday. Looks like he's just popping off.
35K left to go for the leaders in a lead of just over 3 minutes on the final categorized climb of the day. Now it's the start of a very interesting 3-day stretch at the Vuelta. Second Saturday of the race. Huge uphill finish today with a slope of just about 28%. Summit finish tomorrow, and then a long individual time trial on Monday. That all precedes the first rest day of the race on Tuesday. So these next 3 days are going to go a long way towards really shaping the general classification. And at the front end of the field today, Katusha has been doing most of the work, trying to get Joaquin Rodriguez in position to attack that final ramp, get another stage win, a 22nd time bonus with the victory, because he needs to get as much time as possible going into the individual TT where he's likely to lose time. Other guys like Brad Wiggins, Yanni Brajkovic, some of the other top GC names who aren't as explosive on those uphill finishes, they'll be just trying to minimize their losses today because they know that that time trial is where they can take back time.
And tomorrow's finishing climb, pretty long. It's over 10 miles in length. Over 10% maximum grade, so a pretty tough climb to sort things out as well there.
After Monday's TT, everybody's going to know where they stand and what they need to do in the final 2 weeks. Guys are going to know where they need to take time back in the summit finishes that'll still be held over the final couple of weeks. Other guys will know that they can just follow wheels because they gain time in the time trial. Julien Fouchard now struggling here for Cofidis, part of the breakaway, but losing contact.
Well, he was in the break yesterday as well, and whenever you see the same guy in the move 2 days in a row, you know he's going to be in trouble. All of his breakaway companions knew that he would be hard-pressed to contribute all the way to the finish. Hausler not really known for his climbing prowess either, but sometimes in a breakaway you don't have to be a super good climber because they're going to be steady, and it's all about just how much total wattage you can put out over the course of the day. Hausler's a pretty strong guy.
It's always interesting in Spain how they categorize some of these climbs. We've seen a couple of Cat 2s now that look like they could be more difficult than a Category 2 climb, but it's always funky how they rate climbs in Spain. It's not always the way you think they might be.
It seems like every country has their own method. The Tour de France has these HC climbs, these beyond categorization climbs. They don't do that in Spain. They don't do that in Italy.
So Fouchard losing contact, Monaguri, Palomares, and Hausler now. You look ahead at the final 2 weeks of the Vuelta. After the time trial on Monday, you still have 4 summit finishes in the last 2 weeks. So even if you're a guy like Joaquin Rodriguez or somebody who could lose time in the TT, there is an opportunity to recover that time. Question is, how much time will you have to make up? And who might pass you in the time trial? That's the key, because if some of the relatively good climbers gain a lot of time in the individual time trial and they can just follow wheels and they're on good form, it's going to be tough, even though the climbers have the advantage of those climbs late in the race, to really shed guys like a Wiggins or a Brajkovic who can still climb as well as time trial.
Sure, and that's the whole game about stage racing. You have to be the best at every part of the bike race, and it's not just the racing in the time trials, in the flat stages, in the mountains, but it's also staying out of crashes, staying at the front, avoiding the splits, eating properly, recovering, all that stuff. Over 3 weeks, these guys are not just physically spent by the end, but they're emotionally really tired.
And look how Vincenzo Nibali gained time a couple of days ago on what many thought was a nondescript descent off a Cat 2 climb. And he wound up slicing his deficit in half on the general classification and moving up inside the top 3.
And now he's only 16 seconds behind Chavanel, and we've got a move here.
It's off the front of the field by a Rabobank man. And they lost Oscar Freire, who abandoned the race earlier today.
They lost Matty Breschel a couple of days ago. He was actually sprinting quite well.
Well, that's Carlos Barreto, the Spaniard.
Barreto probably trying to help set up Kruijswijk and Mollema. They've got a pretty solid team, this Rabobank team.
Barreto often attacks late in stages, and Kruijswijk certainly their top climber on the squad. The guy they're riding for on the GC is Fabian Cancellara, sitting at the back of the group. It's now 2:24 behind the 4-man breakaway. And our leader's just about 1K from the summit of the climb.
It's really starting to take its toll now. Cancellara slipping off the back, but you know what? He's got such a big engine. I bet you he'll roll right back up through the caravan on the descent.
So Barreto, the first move from the field. He's out on the road between the 4-man breakaway and the peloton, but just seconds ahead of that peloton that's being led by Katusha at the moment. Near the summit of the Cat 2, the leading group is down to 2, as it's Matteo Monagudi and Adrian Palomares. They have dropped Heinrich Hausler and Julian Fouchard. And it's Monagudi leading Palomares to the summit of the final categorized climb of the day. Fouchard was the first to drop off. Heinrich Hausler, who you see right there, the second man to lose contact. See if he can regain touch with the leaders on the descent.
They'd be well advised probably to wait for him just those handful of seconds so they have another guy to pull to try and stay in front of this field.
And pulling the field up is Katusha. The green helmet sitting at the back of the train, Joaquin Rodriguez. 23 seconds down on the general classification and looking for his second stage win of this year's race. It would also give him a 20-second time bonus. He could conceivably be the new leader by the end of the day. Sylvain Chavanel experiencing his 4th day in the red jersey today for Quickstep. Now Katusha, a very fine first week with 2 stage wins, Burrito and Daniel Moreno. And Rodriguez wearing the white jersey of the combined classification. Moreno, the polka dot jersey, as the leader of the King of the Mountains. And that's all well and good, but at the end of the race, what they want is the top step of the podium with Rodriguez.
That's going to be the big challenge for Rodriguez. Fouchard still in between the breakaway of 3 and the field. It looks like he's going to cross just a little bit over 1.5 minutes behind. So he's pretty much smack dab in the middle. It's a tough place to be by yourself.
Fouchard actually bridged up with Palomares to Monagudi and Hausler earlier in the stage. It was Heinrich Hausler and Matteo Monagudi who were the first breakaway of two riders. Fouchard and Palomares had to do a lot of work just to make it across the gap. And now over 2 minutes and counting for the field, led by Katusha, coming up on the summit.
Well, they've closed down considerably.
2 and change. So a Cat 1 and a pair of Cat 2s now in the rear view mirror. Still 2 intermediate sprints coming up, and then the uphill finish with a slope of 28% in the finishing town of San Lorenzo de El Escorial later in the stage.
They still have a couple of other unrated climbs before the finish as well, so it's far from simple from here to the end.
Now the second intermediate sprint comes up in the finishing town of El Escorial, but it's not at the actual finish line. It comes with 13K to go, and they'll do a circuit around the town before they come back and end the race altogether. So kind of like the uphill finish on stage 5, they'll come into the finishing town once prior to the end of the stage, but they'll veer off the road before they go through the actual finish line.
Hausler has regained contact, as the other two men certainly like to have more guys pulling through. That means you get more rest. It helps out in many ways. Keeps the speed higher, gives you a better chance of staying away as well.
2 minutes with under 30K left. Stage 5, we had a slope of 23% in the final kilometer. And when you get up over 20%, you're talking about gradients that are almost unheard of. You typically never see anything that steep, and today they call it the steepest finish in a Grand Tour that we've ever seen.
It's a lot steeper than stuff you'll ever see in the Tour de France. Sometimes the Giro puts in some crazy steep finishes as well, but 28%, if that's really what it is, that is truly phenomenal. 1 year in the Peace Race, before the wall came down in '87, we raced in Poland up to the bottom of a 90-meter ski jump in a time trial. They actually hand cemented it a little bit before the race. And
so
guys,
what's it like to go up the slope like that?
Well, we started out on road bikes, or on time trial bikes, and then we switched to road bikes right at the bottom of the climb. And out of 150 guys, only about 30 of them actually made it up the hill. It was so steep that your rear wheel would break loose and you immediately would lose your forward momentum. First guys that hit it actually fell over and then rolled down the hill. So then they had mechanics next to them, and as soon as you lost traction, they would help you get off your bike and you would run the last part.
Please tell me you were not one of those who rolled down the hill.
I wasn't, thankfully.
You made it up?
I did not make it up on the bike. I had to jump off. Yeah, we actually didn't even have appropriate gearing at the time. Nobody was prepared for that finish.
We'll see how they handle it today. Coming up in the next 26K. Giro occasionally will go over 20%, but not that often on a climb. And especially right there at the finish. To have something over 20% inside the last K is very unusual.
One of the other big differences between the Tour de France, the Vuelta a Espana, or the Giro d'Italia is that the Tour de France tends to use larger roads. The Vuelta and the Giro, they don't mind throwing in a little goat path finishing climb through some town. The Tour de France doesn't do that to the guys.
So this is Julien Fouchard. He's caught between the 3 leaders and the peloton. 149 back in the front of the race. It is Heinrich Hausler, Matteo Monagudi, and Adrian Palomares who are at the front. And the peloton being led by Katusha, as they have been for most of the day, riding for Joaquim Rodriguez. Sunny and hot once again. I don't know if we've seen a cloud in the first 8 days of the Vuelta. Temperature most of the way through the first week, right around 100 degrees. Last couple of days, it's backed off to around 90. But still toasty.
Yeah, we'll be 90 degrees, another 110 miles in a 90-degree day. with over 10,000 feet of climbing.
And even 25K now for the three-man leading group. Just about a dozen kilometers away from coming into the finishing town for the first time, as they will then begin their loop around town. Back to the leaders, and Matteo Monagudi from AG2R out front. At the end of the day, he will be the new leader of the King of the Mountains classification. He's taken the top time over the three categorized summits on the day, so he will supplant Daniel Moreno in the polka dot jersey going forward to tomorrow's summit finish.
Very worth, very hard pressed to stay with the peloton.
So Fouchard about to be picked up by the Katusha-led peloton. So that'll leave us with this large field, and then just the group of three out front: Kausler, Monagudi, and Palomares. Fouchard reeled in, and now down to 24 kilometers left to go on stage number 8. Of BMC attacking from the field here on this unrated climb, with Amets Charuka of the Euskaltel squad. Now with Igor Anton, their GC leader, losing time in the first week. Euskaltel going to plan B, C, and D right now.
They got to look for stages and other opportunities right now, because they had focused so much on the leadership role that Igor Anton had, but he has just been struggling in the bike race.
And Euskaltel has a lot of good climbers, because they were hoping to support Anton in all the big mountains at this year's Vuelta. So they do have some options to get some stage wins and still do something very productive. So Charuka and Kohler here, second group on the road behind our three leaders. Heinrich Hausler sitting at the back for Garmin Cervelo. Matteo Monagudi in the middle for AG2R. And Andalusia's Adrian Palomares, the Spaniard, out front.
Palomares on the front, really laboring. You can see him rocking his shoulders. Not a lot of wins for that man, but he's definitely a breakaway specialist. We see him in the moves all the time, and this is not the first time he's been off the front in this year's Vuelta.
The veteran, 35 years of age, riding his second Vuelta. A stage win at the Tour of Britain back in 2007, and that's our first intermediate sprint point of the day. A little unusual as they're going uphill, but an intermediate sprint nonetheless.
Hey, take them when you can get them, however they are. Palomares will pick that up along with his stage win of the Tour of Britain back in 2007.
Only at the Vuelta do the sprints go uphill like that.
That was rather random.
And another intermediate sprint coming up with 13K to go. That'll be in the finishing town, as they'll come in one time before they begin the circuit around town.
It was Kohler who struck out first, and then Charuka came up to him, and they're not all that far behind the three leaders. And look at the spirited pace Charuka is setting through this.
Inside of a minute back.
These guys are motivated. They mean business.
And now the field. Now BMC without a big GC leader like they had at the Tour with Cadel Evans. So they're stage hunting at this year's Vuelta. No surprise to see Kohler on the move here late. And the Katusha-led peloton, 117 back. So they've taken out more time. Now Charuka getting a gap on Martin Kohler.
Just that little bit of gap opening up. Kohler suffering just a bit. Charuka back in 2007 was the most aggressive rider in stage 12 of the Tour de France, as well as overall for the entire 3 weeks of racing. So once again, you're witnessing guys who really make their careers out of going on the attack and trying to get things from breakaways.
Trying to recover that time lost to Charuka Thomas Chiruka looking pretty good. Saving the energy until late, and now trying to bridge that gap up to the 3 leaders.
Chiruka's the man who actually in the Tour of the Basque Country was leading the King of the Mountain classification, crashed and broke his collarbone last year in the final road race, and he finished that day, but he couldn't ride the time trial the next day, so he forfeited the KOM championship.
And Martin Kohler, the man behind him, 26-year-old national time trial champion of Switzerland. And the riders they are chasing our front 3. That's Adrian Palomares for Andalusia, setting the tempo with Monagudi and also Heinrich Hausler in tow.
Palomares, the grizzly veteran of the 3 here. Hausler obviously going to sit on because he was hurting on the last climb and actually got dropped. So he needs to now be very careful about how much he helps these guys ride off the front. He doesn't want to ride so hard that he gets himself dropped out of the breakaway. 38 seconds from the 3 leaders to Chiruka. Then another 40 seconds from him back to the peloton, and Kohler somewhere in between there.
Well, the only stage you can really compare this one to so far in the first week of the Vuelta was stage 5 with that steep uphill finish at 23%. And remember, late we saw David Moncoutier attacking, and he was actually still out front by himself inside the final K before he was eventually swept up as they hit those very steep slopes. So we'll see who may be left out there today when they come into that final kilometer.
Typically, when you have those really steep finishes, breakaways will get caught right at the end unless they have a substantial gap, because they don't have the punch to rocket up those hills when they've been off in the wind by themselves.
Under 20K to go for the leaders. When they come in towards the finish at the end of the stage, it's actually pretty flat inside the last 3K until they hit the red kite. And with 1 kilometer to go, it'll quickly start going uphill. They'll hit that 28% section with about 500 meters left to go to the line.
It is steep.
There's also 2 90-degree corners inside the final 3K, with the last one coming inside the final 1 kilometer to the finish. So a very tricky ending to stage number 8. Hausler now at the front of the race. 30 seconds to Chiruka, who's taken back some time, trying to make it a 4-man group once again at the head of the proceedings.
Yeah. Chiruka really wanted to catch those guys before they started going downhill. Now he's going to have a very tough time getting across because they're going to have 3 guys rotating. Hausler, a little bit of a bigger guy, has the momentum and the mass to really plummet the descent. Chiruka is just a small climber.
How much time would you think a break would need at the base of that steep slope at the end in order to make it and steal the thunder from a guy like Rodriguez and the other GC guys?
Well, if we're looking specifically at this group we have, that's been off the front all day long, or virtually all day. Now Chiruka, obviously, he'll be fresher than the others because he just went up there. But they're going to need over a minute, in my estimation, even for that last kilometer. If they're within a minute with 1K to go, they can get caught.
That's how much time can be taken back in such a short span of roadway. Almost 70K an hour for Chiruka. There's the old monastery in the finishing town of San Lorenzo de El Escorial. They'll be riding towards that and come into town with 13K to go before they begin the finishing circuit. Now the 3 categorized climbs are well in the rear view mirror by now, but still a lot of undulating roads here. By no means is it flat here in the final 15K as they come up on the last hour of racing.
Chiruka now starting to lose time to the 3 men off the front due to the downhill. He's got another little climb coming up, so he may still yet have a chance to get across on that climb. But this downhill is really hurting his chances to make it up there.
So his teammate Mikel Nieve with a mechanical issue earlier. Igor Anton was once again struggling. So Euskaltel looking at other options now as this race goes forward into the final 2 weeks. Charuka often will attack late in a stage, has the climbing skills to get over some of these rollers, but does he have enough time and strength to make it up to these front three?
Going to be mighty tough for the 28-year-old Basque rider to make it up to these guys on the downhill.
Now, Euskaltel hoping that they can get their act together before the final few days of the race when the Vuelta visits their home Basque region for the first time in over 3 decades.
There's been a lot of talk about how some people in the Basque region may still protest and block the race and disrupt it. There's a lot of issues there politically, and bike racers are very prone to be in the middle of that because they're not in a stadium. People can just block roads with tractors and things.
Just inside of 16K for the 3 leaders. So about 3K away from hitting the finishing town in the second intermediate sprint. The field just inside of 15K to the finish as you look at the monastery of El Escorial. Built back in the 16th century, a Spanish Renaissance monument. The town itself actually sprung up around the monastery as that was built first. As we're with our 3 leaders going through the town, they'll do a big loop around town and won't actually cross the finish line until the end of the stage. They'll come close to it, but they won't go through. Monastery with ties to the Spanish monarchy, sitting just about 30 miles outside of the capital of Madrid.
Hausler in trouble again already on this climb. Not a rated climb, but it does not mean it's easy. Cumulative effect of all this altitude gain for him starting to take its toll. Looking back, never a good sign.
12K left.
And he's giving it up right here.
And Katusha all day long at the front of the field.
The gap now under 30 seconds, so they brought it all back together very quickly there.
And BMC once again with a move. It was Martin Kohler a few moments ago who launched a solo effort from the field with Amats Charuka but couldn't hold the wheel. And now, speaking of not holding the wheel, that's the case for Heinrich Hausler, as Matteo Monagudi and Adrian Palomares are left at the front, with Palomares moving in front of Monagudi.
Their time is pretty darn limited with that peloton inside of 15 seconds behind. Looks like Cofidis has joined BMC, trying to surge off the front of the peloton.
Here's David Moncoutier late on stage 5 with the solo move and a steep finish that he could not hang on to. Lost his lead in the final K that day. Moncoutier still in search of his first stage win at this year's Vuelta. And they're coming up quickly on the back of Heinrich Hausler.
I believe that's Matthias Frank for BMC, second rider there.
Looked like Rain Terame of Cofidis too.
If that's the case, both those riders very strong and looking for a little bit of a chance here to try and get a gap before that finishing climb.
This is Terame for Cofidis coming to the front. He's got some wheels. Now they are dropping Monagudi and Palomares and pulling away.
Amazing, this is not even a categorized climb, Steve, as look at how difficult it is on the group here. Terame dropping Frank just a little bit as they get close to the top.
So this is now at the front of the bike race, Rain Terame, just ahead of Matthias Frank.
Frank coming in way down in the general classification, 45 minutes. those are the times when sometimes you can escape because the general classification guys will not mark you when you attack.
Now Ray Terame riding away from Matthias Frank right now. Now that was Frank who attacked first, but then Ray Terame got on his wheel and has left him behind on this climb through the finishing town. Cofidis rider, 24 years of age, Estonian national time trial champion, 12th overall at the Tour de France this year.
Finished 3rd overall at the Criterium International in March. He's had a very solid season as well. Fourth overall, Paris-Nice.
Now for a while at this year's tour, he was the best young rider wearing the white jersey. Certainly a promising future ahead for this Estonian. And right now he's thinking of a possible stage win, but more moves coming from the field.
All kinds of action. This is Movistar that's gone on the attack now.
Movistar with Sergio Pardilla and Marcio Bruseyan as their two protected GC riders. And they've been riding near the front with Katusha all day long. And this is Madrazo, who's actually made the move. Angel Madrazo, the Spaniard.
Today's finish, not one for Bruseyan and Pardillo. But Madrazo looking for a piece of the action right now.
And guys trying to get a big enough gap that they can hold off guys like Rodriguez when you get to the steep slopes later on in the stage.
Wow, and look at Madrazo just rocketing across here to Terame, but the field still breathing down their back wheels.
This is the front of the bike race. Ray Terame, Angel Madrazo, but just seconds ahead of the field.
Terame also a very solid time trialist, multiple-time champion in that discipline.
10K banner coming up shortly.
Terame flicked the elbow there. Madrazo, let's go. Come on through.
Katusha, though, chasing him down. So the four-man breakaway. The primary move on the day has been all brought back. The counterattacks have started inside the final 15 kilometers of stage number 8. The pace still so brisk at the front of the field because of Katusha's work. It's going to be hard to get enough time.
Yeah, Moncoutier going on the attack with some other riders as well. Moncoutier in the red of Cofidis.
That's poles for Vacan Soleil, who's making the move. Poles was second to Rodriguez on that steep finish at the end of stage 5. But this is back to the front of the race. 10K to go for Angel Madrazo.
Just about 6 miles now for Madrazo. All kinds of action in the bike race. These are guys at the back of the field. This is the damage on the climb.
Front of the field just seconds behind the guys attacking off the head of the peloton. Right now, Angel Madrazo, the lone leader, with other guys coming, charging from the field, and everybody within just a few seconds as we're within the final 10 kilometers of stage number 8. The uphill finish waiting at the end.
Their last little bit of downhill they get. Road freshly paved. Otherwise, it would have been a real mess for these guys on this tiny little descent.
The 23-year-old Spaniard here. Not many victories to his name. Can he get enough time to be a factor in the stage outcome? Here's the chase behind. Right now, for the riders off the front of the field, it's all about accumulating time before they hit the steep ramp at the finish, because you need to have a buffer. The GC riders certainly hitting that ramp with a high rate of speed. There's going to be some fresh legs back there. Remember how Moncoutier was scooped up in a hurry just prior to the steep slope at the end of stage 5. Could be the same case for any leaders in the next 8 kilometers of stage number 8.
It's a bold move for victory, but it's going to be really tough for him to stay away from all the firepower in that peloton right behind him.
3 chasers. Just over 10 seconds back of Madrazo. And then the field just seconds behind them. So everybody within 20 seconds right now, heading into the final 8 kilometers of our 8th day of racing here at the Vuelta. Michele Scarpone is just behind Nibali. 5K remaining.
Just 3 miles for the finish of the bike race for these guys, and it's about to go uphill precipitously.
Now in the final 3K, 2 90-degree corners. One of those coming inside the final kilometer. Largely flat in the last 3K until you get inside the final kilometer itself when it goes really uphill, almost vertically.
Madrazo sits up waiting. Terame just blistering straight on by. He's got his teammate David Moncoutier 2 wheels back.
And not too far behind them, the Katusha-led peloton, and here is the red jersey of Sylvain Chavanel sitting way at the back.
That's not where you want to be right now, Chavanel, with that serious wall. He needs to get his teammates back here. That's Wiggins in front of him also.
Wiggins knew he wasn't going to factor on the podium today, but just wanted to minimize his losses. Right now, he's at the back.
But Wiggins had a teammate there, and Chavanel is probably going to ride that train right back up to the front as Wiggins gets pulled up by his teammate.
5-man group at the front, but just ahead of this field led by Katusha with 4K left. Wouter Poels is among the 5 leaders here, a guy who finished second to Rodriguez on the steep finish to stage 5. He said that they, as a team, were going to wait and see how this stage played out to see if he would attack late, so he must be feeling good. He pulled out of the Tour de France after 4 days, so really hoping to bounce back at the Vuelta. And right now, it's David Moncoutier who's just in front of Poels, who is now going to come through, it looks like, and take a pull.
Very tactically difficult place for a guy like Poels to be in, because he's got the punch to be almost as good as Rodriguez. We've seen that. But if he sits in this break and he drills it in the wind for a few hard pulls, he'll take that edge off, and he won't be anywhere close to as good as Rodriguez.
All right, the last 3K. Rein Terame at the front in those bright yellow shoes for Cofidis. And it's about to all come back together. Couple of technical corners coming up as well.
Terame really giving it right now. Nobody else from that group with him at this point. But sometimes when you're in this position, you know that you're not going to be able to climb with the leader, so you may as well just keep the throttle all the way on the floor and get whatever you can out of the rest of the day.
Had a 4-man breakaway earlier today that had a lead of almost 8 minutes. Everybody has been caught from that breakaway. The counterattacks are about to be caught as well by the field. With the red jersey of Sylvain Chavanel still sitting at the back. It looks like his 4th day in red could be his last.
There are no guarantees in bike racing, but I'd say that's as close as to a guarantee as you're going to get. Chavanel almost certainly will lose it.
Rein Terame looking over his shoulder. He knows it's just about over.
He just completely popped. Still had the gap and just came to a standstill.
All right, this is the front of the race with 2K to go. Lampre coming through. Michele Scarpone, their GC leader, he said that he's watching Perito all day long. He wants to be on his wheel when that final climb starts up to the finish.
And Cofidis on the attack again.
It's been Moncoutier, it's been Rein Terame. They had Fouchard in the breakaway earlier today. They have more than animated this stage. Now Lampre chasing inside the final 2K. It's been largely Katusha that's been pulling the peloton all day long.
And oh, if we didn't tell you already, yes, there are cobbles at the finish of the race, as well as the 20% grades.
And time bonuses of 20, 12, and 8 seconds for the first 3. Who is going to be the new overall leader of the Vuelta at the end of stage 8?
Going over cobblestones when you're climbing is so incredible. incredibly rough. It's so hard to get to the power, to the pedals, through to the wheels, because you're bouncing all over the place.
Michele Scarpone sitting second wheel for Lampre. He's got that yellow frame on his bike. Joaquin Rodriguez about 4 wheels back. He's in the green helmet and the white jersey.
And Jan Bakalan's there, Omega Pharma Lotto, sitting third wheel. He was one of the men that was in that escape group just a moment ago.
Rodriguez fourth wheel. Leopard Trek has Jakob Fuglsang, who's still in the top 5 in the GC. He's just a couple of wheels behind Rodriguez. Everybody is looking at this man.
He looks mighty comfortable right now, but the stuff going through his head must be pretty intense right about now. There's Dan Martin, blue helmet, Garmin Cervelo. Pretty good finish for him today as well.
Leopard Trek has 3 riders up there. Daniel Moreno just off to the right shoulder of Dan Martin in the polka dot jersey of the King of the Mountains leader. And there's the red jersey of Sylvain Chavanel, the overall race leader, who's at the back of the field.
Chavanel comes into the day only 15 seconds in front of Moreno, 16 in front of Nibali, and 23 in front of Rodriguez.
So it's Lampre at the front of this field. Katusha was working all day, and now it's going to be up to Rodriguez to deliver. He's without any teammates in front of him.
Przemysław Niemiec, the Polish rider on the front there for Michele Scarpone. Very critical lieutenant when it comes to climbing setups for Scarpone.
1 kilometer left to go, and now for the first time ever at a Grand Tour, we're going to see what a 28% slope is like up to the finish line. This is Michele Scarpone.
He's going way early, Steve. This is a big move.
Got Bakalan's on his wheel, Joaquin Rodriguez sitting third, and then Daniel Moreno fourth.
I think it's way too early for Scarpone to be hitting the front hard like that. He didn't go all in, but still, that's going to take a little of the sting out of the legs.
Here's that last technical corner. Scarpone seeing who's coming with him, and Sylvain Chavanel has given it up.
It's done for him.
We will have a new race leader at the end of the day.
15%, the boys looking at each other. You can see Porito with the green helmet out of the saddle, just behind Scarpone.
No big attacks yet.
And you could really get caught in traffic here on this narrow road. If somebody attacks, you could get caught.
So Bakalan's has come to the front just ahead of Scarpone. Rodriguez sitting third. A couple of Euskaltel riders up there near the front as well. Sylvain Chavanel slipping off the back.
And Rodriguez just following Scarpone, not what we expected. We expected that to be the other way around.
This is Jürgen Vandenbroek, it looks like, now for Omega Pharma Lotto, who has come to the front, their top GC rider. As Scarpone goes by him, Rodriguez now on his wheel.
Oh, Scarpone with a teeny bit of a gap. He actually has a shot at this.
All right, so it looks like a battle right now between Scarpone and Joaquin Rodriguez. Look how steep it is.
But Rodriguez now starting to bring back the Italian, and he counterattacks.
And there goes Porito around Scarpone. Nobody is better on a steep finish than Porito Rodriguez. And for the second time in the last several days, Joaquin Rodriguez is riding away from the field on a steep finish at the Vuelta.
He makes it look so incredibly easy, but now he has the cobbles to contend with as well.
Scarpone a distant second, then Jürgen Vandenbroek behind him. But Joaquin Rodriguez, who needs the time, he needs the 20-second bonus for finishing first. He needs the gap going into the time trial on Monday, and he's doing everything possible to maximize his time gain right now.
A stage tailor-made for Rodriguez, and he's going to get another win.
It's not often that everyone knows at the outset who the man to watch is going to be and can't do anything about it, but this type of finish just suited Rodriguez so perfectly.
Scarpone really went too early.
Joaquin Rodriguez, after almost 5 hours on the steepest slope in Grand Tour history, now has a deuce. His second win at the Vuelta this year. 20-second time bonus for finishing first. Michele Scarpone coming up to the line is going to get a 12-second time bonus.
And the gap looking like just over 10 seconds. Not as much separation there between the other contenders as we may have thought, except for Chavanel, who went out the back.
And there is Chavanel still struggling up the climb.
That's a rough day for Chavanel. Bye-bye to the jersey. He's really been good over the last handful of days, but today just not a finish that suited him.
So a big change on the general classification as Joaquim Rodriguez wins his second stage of this year's race. Third stage win for the Katusha team.
And Rodriguez will also move into the overall race lead.
As the fourth day in red is the last for Sylvain Chavanel of Quick-Step. They closed with a steep uphill finish on stage 8, and now a bigger mountaintop finish awaits on day 9 at the Spanish Grand Tour. Joaquim Rodriguez is our 5th different leader. His teammate Daniel Moreno is in 2nd place. Jakob Fuglsang has moved up into 3rd. Vincenzo Nibali lost some time yesterday on the uphill finish, but Michele Scarpone really showed his skills for the first time on that climb, and he rounds out the top 5. So this is the finish on La Covatilla. Exposed to the wind, steep near the end, could play a role in further shaping the general classification at the end of stage number 9. This was earlier as the riders rolled out of the start town. Another sunny, warm day, and we'll have the live racing when we come back. A new start town for the Vuelta this year, Via Castine. That's where the riders began earlier today in stage number 9, and the route taking them southwest to the summit finish at La Covatilla, being used for the 4th time ever in the race's history.
Day that's not super tough until the end, a little bit rolling up and down, a lot of heat, some exposure for sure to the wind, especially on the final climb.
And we are now live with our coverage on Universal Sports. This is the front of the field. We have a 4-man breakaway that has 48.5 kilometers left to go, and they have a lead of just under 8 minutes. Katusha riding at the front just the way they did all day yesterday, with the intention of setting up Corito, Joaquim Rodriguez, for the stage win. He delivered with his 2nd stage victory of this year's race, and he's going for the hat trick today if the conditions are right. Now, Lampre also has a few guys up there. Michele Scarpone, really for the first time in the race yesterday, came to the front late. He was one of the protagonists in that uphill climb. Couldn't hang with Rodriguez and ultimately had to slip back down the standings. Now, our 4-man breakaway, first look at them. Sebastian Long is the 31-year-old from Omega Farmalado who is up here. Jose Vicente Toribio, the 26-year-old from Andalusia. And then a couple of Vacan Soler riders. You have Pim Ligthart and Martin Kaiser. Nobody a threat on the general classification. The highest placed rider is over 50 minutes back. And the first glance at the red jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez. 5th different leader we have had in the first 9 days of the Vuelta. Rodriguez yesterday picking up his 4th career Vuelta stage win.
This morning, just before the start, Rodriguez said he needed to give his teammates a little bit of a chance to rest today after working so incredibly hard yesterday. But look at them all lined up here on the front once again. Sometimes the race dictates whether or not your team is allowed to have any rest.
Brad Wiggins sitting just 126 back. He's been riding at the front to stay out of trouble, and yesterday admittedly was a stage finish that did not suit him. A short, steep climb today, a little more in his wheelhouse, but he's really looking forward to the time trial tomorrow to take back time. Our road ID stage profile, the red line is our 4 leaders headed towards that summit finish with a maximum slope of almost 14%. The steepest part of the climb comes late, as it's over 10% for much of the last 7 kilometers. And this is our first of 2 intermediate sprints coming up in the town of Guijuelo.
Sebastian Long riding through there uncontested. Interestingly, this group of 4 leaders does have the 2 men from one team, Vacan Soler, in their 2nd Vuelta. They did the Vuelta 2 years ago as well.
Big main field still riding together. And they've given this breakaway some leash. In fact, the largest lead for the 4 riders up the road, 10.5 minutes. That's the largest margin we've seen for any breakaway so far in the race to date.
That's a lot of leash, and that's a lot of time that Katusha then has to ride on the front to pull back. They don't have to pull it back all the way, but they do want to make sure that when they get to that final climb, Rodriguez is protected, and they still have some firepower to set him up to try and gain more time at the finish.
Well, J-Rod's perspective is interesting because he says that by and large, he feels this is a day that a breakaway could stay away, but if the circumstances dictate, he will go for the win, try and add to his margin at the top of the standings and get another time bonus. But you would think that maybe he would take more of a direct approach, saying, look, no matter what the circumstances on the road, we're going for the win. We're going for as much time as we can, because the time trial is going to be his downfall. And wherever the opportunity presents itself, he has got to take time.
Yeah, he needs a lot of time for that time trial. Kaiser there, we were just having a nice look at his chain ring. Notice that it was not round, it was kind of elliptical. A lot of guys using different versions of elliptical chain rings these days. It's something that started in the 80s, disappeared, and has come back in the last handful of years. Get your feet over the top and bottom of the pedal stroke quickly.
Now that is Pim Ligthart of the Vakon Soleil team. Dutch national road champion, wearing the special jersey, riding in his first Vuelta a Espana as well. Jose Vicente Toribio in his second Vuelta. He was in one of the breaks earlier in week number 1, and earlier this year picked up the biggest victory of his career, winning a stage at the Volta a Portugal.
A great win there for him in Portugal just earlier in August, so not long at all before the start of this race. You can see that Scarponi's also highly interested in a bonus second attempt here today in the top 3, so he's got a couple of men pitching in on the front.
I think it's curious about to give them the opportunity to recharge when possible, but looking ahead, they have the time trial tomorrow, first rest day on Tuesday, so a lot of the other Katusha riders can also use the individual time trial as a de facto rest day, so they'll have a couple of opportunities to rest and recover these next 2 days on Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, they'll certainly use the time trial as a rest day. All the guys probably will on the team except for Moreno and Rodriguez, and they will throw everything they have into the time trial stage 10 tomorrow. A little bit of a log jam here, and luckily nobody touching wheels and going down. It just happens so quickly when the road changes direction and it gets narrower and you have almost 200 guys. It funnels down and really creates those slowdowns later in the pack.
Down to 185 riders at the Vuelta on what some are calling the first true summit finish of this year's race. It's steeper than the first summit finish at Sierra Nevada. How much a difference will it make? We'll find out in the next 44K. Vuelta, a town known for its Iberian hams. So if you ever need a holiday ham, this is the place to go, Todd Gugolski.
You know, I've never had one, and maybe you should get me one for the holiday.
Next time I'm there.
All right.
Just over 7 minutes now. From the break to the field. And again, it's Katusha and Lamprey at the front end of the peloton. This is a view from the back end. They'll pick up a ham in the feed zone. I know it's usually a gel or a power bar, but hey.
They do the paninis where they have sometimes some ham, sometimes a little bit of turkey, and some bread with some jam. So today,
I'd like to see a big old ham.
Local.
I want a big old ham in one of those Musette bags. Well, a lot of riders just cruising along at the back here, 3.5 hours in. See some Radio Shack jerseys there, and keep an eye on Radio Shack's team leader, Yanni Brajkovic, today, because he's right up there within 2 minutes on the general classification. And last time that the Vuelta finished at La Covatilla, it was back in 2006, a stage won by Danilo De Luca, but Yanni Brajkovic was second on that stage. So he likes this climb, and he's been looking forward to it since the race began this year.
And yesterday before the start, he said this climb was not for him yesterday, but today it was. And look at this, Long taking off here now. Ligthart sitting on his wheel. A little bit of infighting quite early in the race for these guys.
Very interesting. The sprint was a while ago for these two, so not sprinting for any specific reason on the road. So it's Long and Lichtart dropping Kaiser and Toribio.
Sebastian Long on the back there is announced that he will retire at the end of the season. He's 31. He's in his second Vuelta. He has been a German national time trial champion, but he just hasn't had much in the way of results the last 5 years. And he's decided all this time on the road is a little bit much, and he's ready to spend more time with his family.
He's a guy who doesn't mind attacking solo. In fact, that's the way he started today's stage. Went out with a solo move. It was Jose Vicente Toribio, the first man to bridge across and catch him. Then the two Vaca Soleil riders teamed up, launched their move from the field. They made it across to form a group of 4 out front. And you might remember it was early in the Giro this year that Sebastian Long had that long solo breakaway almost the entire stage. And he was out front by himself earlier today as well.
Bonuses in the Vuelta still very big, so looks like replay here, a little bit of attacking, and that's based upon the fact that it looks like the guys maybe not working all that well together. And that was, first of all, Kaiser talking with Long, saying, hey, we need you to work a little more, and then Long just jumps him.
Now they have just about a half minute on the two other breakaway riders. Main field hovering at just under 7 minutes back of the breakaway men.
Honestly, up in the front, I think the guys have been much better served to work together, to talk it out, say, look, we have to stay together. 4 guys are going to be much better than 3 or 2. Let's just all rotate through.
This break has had a lot of time throughout the stage, but the margin has been coming down. I mentioned the last time they used the summit finish at La Covatilla was 5 years ago. And on that day, about 80 riders came together at the bottom of the climb. So you had a large group still as one when they hit the base of that final 18K ascent. The selection was eventually made. DeLuca won the stage, followed by Brajkovic, who finished on the same time, and Andrei Kasechkin was third on the day, and he's riding in this year's race for Astana. And that just goes to show that a break could survive, but we've seen in the past that large groups do make it to the base of this final climb together when La Covatilla is used at the Vuelta.
There's Moreno in the Mountains jersey, the white with the polka dots. And this is Michele Scarpone in the green bike. He's the man they will be riding for. The other green bike on the team is the big sprinter, Alessandro Patacchi. So the GC man as well as the sprinter man for that team in the special colored bikes.
Our 4 leaders, under 40K left to go, but an 18K climb waiting for them at the finish of stage number 9. First off, how selective do you expect this final climb to be, and how do you think the GC guys are going to approach it when they hit that climb?
Yeah, this is a deceptive climb in the sense that it kind of goes up in steps. It's not really just a straight shot. It kind of climbs out, climbs out. So I think there's ample territory to make some real serious attacks. One guy who was talking about his chances today was Igor Anton, who was the strongman last year's Vuelta, been having some struggles this year. He's hoping to kind of revive his Vuelta today. It's hard to say. I think it's going to be more of a race of elimination. There'll be some attacks late in the stage, I predict. But I think that guys who simply have been hanging on are going to get shoved out the back today.
And when you look at the wind that's picking up just a little bit more and more on the final climb, how much of a factor do you suppose that will play in the finish?
Yeah, this is a very explosive climb to the winds. The winds are kicking up. It's not quite as windy as it has been, but the winds up there in the upper slopes will definitely be a factor. Little guys like Yanni Brajkovic, he always says he has a hard time, and he rode well here back in 2006 when he kind of made his first revelation. He's hoping that this climb's better for him. He said he's struggled on those climbs like Azada Peñas or even yesterday at Escordial. So Brajkovic, I think, is going to try to make some moves. Danny Martin is feeling good from Garmin. I think it's going to be, the pure climbers need to make a move.
And as far as the guys you've been talking to and what you've been hearing over there, are there any guys that may be holding back a little today with the time trial in mind for stage number 10 tomorrow?
Yeah, perhaps, obviously the time trial specialists won't be up there killing themselves, but the GC guys, of course, they don't want to lose any more time. A guy like Menchoff, who's been kind of hard to really kind of tell where Menchoff is in this world. He's obviously had some struggles. He needs to really have an impact tomorrow in Salamanca. Nibali, too, said he was kind of surprised how much time he's been kind of losing to Perito Rodriguez. But I think those, this world is so tight right now. I think even trying to play poker could kind of backfire on him.
And when you have guys like Nibali that normally could take a lot of time back on Rodriguez in the time trial, but Nibali also finds himself behind some of the other major players in the race, so maybe he does have to attack today.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, especially with the time bonuses, that's where Rodriguez has already picked up 40 seconds on his rivals just by winning the stages. That's always going to be a factor in this Vuelta. And I think like Wiggins really is in a driver's seat right now. He's been doing pretty well getting through this first part of this Vuelta. He can kind of hang right there and just kind of sit in with those guys again today. Try to, like you said, perhaps save his legs a little bit and tomorrow just nail it in the TT tomorrow. Wiggins and really come out on top.
In your mind, Andrew, is there a chance that Rodriguez is going to have enough opportunity at the end of this race to recover whatever time he loses in the time trial tomorrow? Is he going to minimize the damage enough in the TT that those 4 summit finishes coming late in the race are going to be ample time for him to get the red jersey back?
Yeah, he was saying yesterday, suggesting that if he loses between 2 and 3 minutes to some of the guys like the Wiggins and the Minchoff, that he thinks he could get that time back by chipping away at every stage. We still have 4 more summit finishes ahead of us, and the most hardest ones are still to come, obviously. But he says anything beyond that, if he loses again 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, it'll be too much time to try to get back, because obviously those other guys, they can still climb fairly well. He'll be getting chipping away half minute, 45 seconds in a stage. But it's hard to imagine that he could just right away and get back 3 or 4 minutes at one stage.
And to me, I think the bigger challenge for him is not Wiggins, because Wiggins comes in 1:43 behind Rodriguez. So if he loses 3 minutes, he's still, not that far behind. But if Nibali nails the time trial, then he could really be in trouble.
That's right. We saw, last year Nibali definitely has the climbing legs to stay with these guys, and of course he can go on the attack as well. And Nibali has been looking really solid. I mean, I think he's been probably the most consistent of the GC guys. There's a few names kind of floating in there too, guys like Fuglsang. Let's see what he can do tomorrow, because he's a pretty good all-around rider, and he's really a name for the future. And this is kind of his first big test. He came out of the tour. He said he was not really 100% focused on this Vuelta. He told me he came out of the Vuelta with good legs, and he's been feeling pretty good so far. I mean, Fuglsang could be a definite threat for the podium as well.
All right, Hoodie, we appreciate the time. Is the heat letting up enough? Are guys adjusting, and is it relenting enough that they're kind of settling in now?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely much cooler than it has been. It's still warm. It's still summertime in Spain. But up here in Avila, where this race was starting today, Castillo, it was quite almost cool in the morning a little bit. It's still warm, high 20 Celsius, but it's a good 10, 12, 13 degrees Celsius cooler than it was even just 2 days ago. I talked to Heinrich Hausley and said the finish line, he said he noticed a big difference just in as they're pushing north into northern Spain, they're noticing a difference in the heat. And he also said the riders are getting used to it, but that's a big gap and difference in the temperature on the road, and that definitely, over the course of 3 weeks, is a huge factor.
Hoodie, always a pleasure. Enjoy the final climb.
All right, guys, thanks.
Jakob Fuglsang, certainly a name to consider. He's still very much up there in the GC picture. He wore the red jersey of overall race leader early on in week number 1 as well.
And he comes into the day, he's sitting in 3rd. He's just 34 seconds down. He's a very interesting guy because he's a solid time trialist. He's a good climber. But typically in a race of this length, he's going to have a bad day in the mountains. And so far, he has not had that. So if he can stave off that bad day, he could be a legitimate threat.
All right, these are our 2 leaders. Sebastian Long, followed by Pim Ligthart, with 22.5K to go, 4 hours in. So they are just about 4 kilometers away from the start of the final climb, leading up to our 2nd summit finish of this year's race at the Spanish Grand Tour.
At all for the 2 men off the front, but the pack really has to be careful through here. Notice there's a lot of dirt on the road, a lot of opportunities for punctures as well on a road like this.
4 minutes 20 seconds up to our 2 leaders, Long and Ligthart. Euskaltel riding at the front, and with Igor Anton, he came into the Vuelta as their GC leader, but lost time in the first week. Now, what's interesting is the fact that before the Vuelta began, he said that this very climb that they're about to do was one where the GC guys would more likely be thinking about not losing time rather than concentrating on winning. However, his priorities have now shifted with that lost time in the first week. He's not right now thinking about not losing time. He has to think more about gaining time on this mountain.
It's a perfect opportunity for him to go for a stage win. I think the overall classification is out of reach for Anton at this point after his first week. But with the other guys thinking about saving a little something for the time trial tomorrow, if he's got the legs, this is a great time for him to strike.
Pace pretty brisk. Single file out the back, and the red line, the leaders up front, very close to the base of this last climb that begins in the town of Bayar and climbs to the ski resort known as La Covatilla. Toribio and Kaiser, the two riders from the original four-man breakaway, about to be swept up by the peloton. So now just Long and Ligthart, and the peloton chasing from behind. That's the situation on the road with 20K left. Coming up shortly, the second intermediate sprint in Bayar before they begin the climb to La Covatilla. Long in front for Omega Pharma-Lotto, and then Vacan Soleil's Pim Ligthart rotating through, now coming to the front to take a pull.
Well, they're working extremely smoothly together. Certainly would have been nicer for their chances had they kept all four guys together, but sometimes you just can't get everybody on the same page. That's Ligthart's team director pulling up beside on a nice descent, 40+ miles an hour, handing bottles out the window. Don't try this at home, folks.
Less than a kilometer away from the start of the climb.
You know, they make it look easy the way they grab bottles out of the car, but actually even the professionals once in a while do get tangled up with the cars and crash, and they have years and years of experience doing it.
Now Katusha has come back to the front of the field. Lampre sitting second wheel, and then Gorka Verdugo of Euskaltel in third position right now. So several different teams lending a hand in the chase. A few wheels back, the red jersey of Joaquin Rodriguez alongside his teammate in the polka dot mountain jersey, Daniel Moreno. Just about 4 minutes to the two leaders. Getting onto the lower slopes of the climb. This is the town of Bayar, site of the oldest bull ring in the entire world. But today, it's about the climb to the finish. La Covatilla being used for the 4th time ever in the Vuelta. It debuted back in 2002. Was used again 2 years later in 2004. And then 2 years after that in 2006. So it's been 5 years since it's appeared in the race, but back in as the second of 6 summit finishes here in this year's edition. By the start of the climb up to the summit finish. Euskaltel leading the way, clock counting to the second intermediate sprint point in Bayar. See how much time they've taken out of our two leaders, Long and Ligthart. Now it's down well inside of 4 minutes now, 3.5. And some other riders struggling at the back, including Fabian Cancellara, number 102. For some, it'll be a much longer climb than others. Guys back in the gruppetto, just trying to ride a steady tempo and make the time cut.
That's what most of the guys will be looking for in the race today. A bunch of guys be out the back right away. But the men that really have to put themselves through all kinds of torture are the men that are close to as strong as the strongest guys. So they have to follow as long as they possibly can. And that's what really hurts.
15K for our two leaders. Ligthart pacing Long at the moment, both with the jerseys unzipped. It's cooler than it has been, but still hot, with a temperature around 90 degrees. This climb will take them up to just about 6,500 feet in elevation. And the hardest part of the climb comes late. The gradients are a little bit easier in the first several kilometers, but it averages over 10% for much of the last 7K. And then right near the top, it does ease back to around 6%. Steepest part, the max gradient, is just under 14%. That comes 13.5 kilometers in, which puts the riders at 5K from the finish at that point. Sherrod staying near the front, as his teammates helping him out, setting the pace on the lower slopes of the climb.
Vladimir Karpets, one of the main men who does a lot of work for Rodriguez on the front of the peloton now. Tom Bonin having a look back. Today's a day for him to survive as well as tomorrow.
Taylor Phinney, number 33 for BMC. And the first look we've had at the Vuelta of Taylor Phinney riding his first Grand Tour.
Taylor's had a tough week. He started out really struggling, but the last couple days he's gotten a bit better.
Large main field. Still in pursuit of the two riders up the road. Last check, a lead of 3.5 minutes, but it's eroding. Three riders for Katusha out front. A couple of Lampre riders, Espana, Giox, and then the red jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez, followed by Daniel Moreno in the Mountains jersey.
I tell you, Katusha has had an incredible bike race so far with a couple of three-stage wins between Rodriguez and Moreno, holding the overall lead as well as the Mountains lead.
Jorge Azanza is the latest Euskaltel rider to come to the front. It was Gorka Verdugo earlier. Let's see if Igor Anton does have better legs today than what he showed in week number 1. Mikel Nieve also pretty well placed in the general classification for this Euskaltel team. He wasn't their designated leader coming into the race, but right now just over a minute back on the GC as the day started, in much better position than Anton.
And Anton finds himself 3:28 down on Rodriguez entering today.
Brajkovic coming in just about a minute and a half down. And even in front of him on the GC standings, his teammate Heimar Zubeldia at 1:17 back. So a lot of attention being paid to Brajkovic because he's the GC leader for Radio Shack. But Zubeldia, who's a very good climber, is ahead of Brajkovic in the standings as we sit. Now 12K left on stage 9.
Vorganov continuing to put in a huge effort on the front right now for Katusha. He's a man who's been involved in at least one crash that I've seen so far in the opening days of the race. It's still obviously doing a great job as a helper for Rodriguez.
A dozen K left for our two leaders, whose lead has come down to just over 2 minutes. It seems like just a matter of time. These are still the softer slopes. It does get a lot steeper the further into the climb the riders go. Last 7-8K, averaging close to 10%. Igor Anton, number 51, third in the Euskaltel line on the right-hand side of the road in the orange and black.
Still moving at a very high rate of speed up the lower flanks of this climb. But the percentages of gradient down at this point are 3%, 4%, maybe occasionally hitting 5%. But once they hit about 7K to go, it gets precipitously steeper, immediately up to 10%.
Devin Moncoutier was sitting at the back along with Carlos Sastre of Giox, who says that this climb is perfect for him. Sastre said that a lot over the last few Grand Tours, and he just can't seem to come through on the big mountaintop finishes. Down to 90 seconds from our two leaders to the field. And Sebastian Long has attacked Pim Ligthart and dropped him. So with the 10K banner in the distance, it's Long alone at the front of the stage. Now it's the solo move to try and stay away as long as possible with the lead down to 1.5 minutes on the field. 10K left to go to the summit finish on stage 9. Is ahead of them.
He'll be approaching that 8K to go banner.
Yeah, that is Pim Ligthart, who just went through 9K to go. He's about to be picked up by the field. Long is coming up on the 8K to go banner, still ahead of this field by 1 minute. So the 4-man breakaway has lost 3 to the field. Just Sebastian Long out there by himself, and Liquigas now bringing riders to the front.
Well, well, well. The green and white of Liquigas Cannondale out of the saddle. Vincenzo Nibali, their leader. Maybe he does want something big today.
And this is Long.
Long's a man who, a few years ago in the Tour de France, held the King of the Mountains jersey for 3 stages. And also was the most combative in stage number 9. As we said earlier, he's a guy who always goes on the attack. Usually they don't succeed, however.
Former national time trial champion of Germany, riding in his final season as a professional at the age of 31. And as I promised, he is coming up on the 8K banner.
Last year, he had some trouble with his Achilles tendon, kept him out of the World Championships in Melbourne. And this year, he's announced his retirement coming up at the end of the season.
Well, he's looking. He knows they're coming. And this is where the road really starts to get steep. Lampre, Leopard, and then Daniel Moreno sitting third wheel for Katusha in the polka dot King of the Mountains jersey.
It's just a steady march here by the peloton, slowly grinding guys out the back. All attrition on these long climbs like this.
Long riding for himself, but for how much longer?
Riding for his life here, trying to stay in front of the field, but there's just no way to do it when you're on your own. You've been out front for so long. You don't have that freshness or that pop anymore.
This may not be the end of the day for his team, however, because Jürgen Vandenbroek, his Omega Pharma-Lotto teammate, has been climbing well. Good finish yesterday in the top 3, and he could be up there today at the end with the summit finish at La Covatilla. As you watch the red jersey of Joaquin Rodriguez in the middle of the screen a moment ago climbing. That's Juan Manuel Garate, the Spaniard for Rabobank.
Garate, a pretty good climber himself, so you can see just how hard this is. Things really starting to come unglued now at 12–13%.
Not even to the steepest part of the climb yet, but this is where it starts to really go vertical. Last 7K, averaging about 10%. The steepest part at just under 14% will come right around 5K from the finish.
By that time, there won't be all that many guys left in this big group. It's definitely a stair-stepping type of climb. It has these pitches, then it eases off, and then it pitches up again.
There's Long. We'll see just how far back the field is. Don't need a clock to count now because you'll get the visual. Just one turn back down the road.
Typically, spectators cannot run with the riders that easily. It goes to show his relative speed is not very high.
Especially a guy as chubby as that, too. The fact that he's keeping up shows you that Long is really struggling.
That guy's been, to his credit, he's been training to run next to these guys.
Training with the Tapas. All right, 7K banner.
These kilometers just tick by so incredibly slowly when you're in the lead like Long is with the climb so hard and you're slowly losing your gap.
Lampre with 2 riders on front.
Oh, Chavanel popping. After many days in the overall lead, he lost it yesterday to Rodriguez. today, not the type of finish for him either. He likes those rolling days. He's very good at those.
Joaquim Rodriguez sitting 6th wheel from the front of the head of the main field. Just about over for Sebastian Long. Michele Scarpone, 2nd wheel. Jürgen Vandenbroek behind him for Omega Formulato. Joaquim Rodriguez, it looks like, sitting on the wheel of Vandenbroek there in the red jersey.
Juan Jose Cobo for Geox on the left. The green, black, and white.
Looks like for Movistar, they have Sergio Pardilla up there as well in the blue and green.
Oh, it's all over now. Sebastian Long being brought back. He held on for a long time, but finally succumbed.
As the road really starts to get steep, the breakaway is completely back in the field, and this is the front of the race.
You look at the results at the end of today, you will see Long probably lose 5 minutes to the winner today.
It's Carlos Pareto of Rabobank.
Another one of the men out in the back.
Not the first, won't be the last. So here we have Lampre at the front with Scarpone sitting 2nd wheel. And
there's
a move
the attack
from Cofidis. Now we saw Rain Terame yesterday. David Moncoutier has also launched a few moves late on more than one occasion, and once again for the 2nd straight day, it is Rain Terame late in the stage on an uphill slope, accelerating away from the field.
Terame very aggressive yesterday, but he went too early and ended up blowing up, getting caught, and getting dropped.
Well down in the GC.
You know, he lost 4 minutes and 20 seconds yesterday in the last couple of kilometers. So once he got caught, he just sat up and saved it. Now he's trying again. Daniel Moreno way far back, the King of the Mountains leader, also sitting 2nd overall coming into the day.
In position to lose that jersey.
That's a bit shocking to see Moreno back there. Now there's response, and 4 riders trying to go across to Moreno. That looks like Michele Scarpone on the front there, trying to catch him.
It's like Scarpone 2nd, still Jürgen Vandenbroek 3rd. And another rider that may be Sergio Pardilla of Movistar.
Very interesting to see this. No Joaquim Rodriguez, no Vincenzo Nibali. That looks like a Liquigas rider maybe trying to go across.
5 riders at the front, 1 man a couple of seconds behind. There's Terame in the middle for Cofidis. Michele Scarpone has moved to the front.
Oh, Terame, it looks like he just cracked. Scarpone really putting it on now.
Scarpone really attacked for the first time in this Vuelta yesterday on the steep ramps towards the finish. So back-to-back days, he's making a move late.
Great style he is. That's Sergio Pardilla. Pardilla, one of the main GC men for Movistar.
And that's Menchov just ahead of Joaquim Rodriguez in the red jersey.
Oh, Terame is going backwards now.
Movistar has a couple of different GC cards to play. Marzio Brusset in the Italian is also one of their top GC men, but they said coming in that Pardilla was going to be their main man for this summit finish today in stage 9, and he's responded. When the attacks have started, he's up there near the front.
Brusset does sit almost 20 seconds in front of Pardilla in the GC. Antone. Looks like he's back in trouble again.
He's hoping to bounce back today, but he seems to be suffering once again. And that is Brusset just ahead of him, number 118. Now this is back to the front of the race. Jürgen Vandenbroek is there, Sergio Pardilla, Michele Scarpone, the red jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez, Mikel Nieve of Euskaltel, and somebody's launching a move here. It's the quick step rider.
Looks like Kevin Seeldreyers to me.
That's who it is. Kevin Seeldreyers, the Belgian.
Seeldreyer's a very good climber on that Belgian team.
He attacked earlier in the first week. Looking to see what kind of gap he's going to get. Again, these are the steepest sections of the climb.
Seeldreyer's now bringing a response from the peloton. Seeldreyer's comes into the day in 12th, and that's Nibali.
Nibali with Jurgen Vandenbroek on his wheel.
Really interesting to see how non-active Joaquim Rodriguez is. So there's Seeldreyer's.
Ardea is just behind Vandenbroek. Menchov and Robert Kieserlowski, the Croatian for Astana. I checked that Carlos Sastre for Geox here.
Yeah, Sastre in trouble yet again. And Dan Martin now, Garmin Cervelo going on the move.
So Dan Martin launches the latest move off the front. Multiple accelerations here from various guys at the front of the field.
Martin is a guy who's very good at an uphill sprint finish.
Well, Dan Martin said he liked this Covatia Summit finish before the stage began. Said yesterday was a little too steep for him at the end at over 20%, but boy, he's making his move here.
He's going big right now. Looks like Nicholas Roche is the AG2R man who's made it up there to Dan Martin. 5K to go for those two as they try to pull off the coup here today.
Maximum gradient right here at almost 14%. The other GC contenders lined up behind him. And is Nicholas Roche with Dan Martin trying to get a gap off the front. Roche for AG2R, Dan Martin for Garmin Cervelo, and Joaquim Rodriguez back here, the race leader in the red jersey. And now it's Martin. Starting to pull away from Roche.
Really digging deep. Roche was seventh yesterday in that brutally steep climb, but very different finish than today.
There's Rodriguez.
He does not look all that sharp today. Back in the group, about 15 or 20 guys.
There's no teammates around him here at the moment.
He's used up all his men the last couple of days. But typically for him, he can still hang pretty well on a day like this on his own, though.
He had Menchov just in front of him. And Mikhail Nieve, who was riding near the front of the group, trying to launch the acceleration. It's Martin at the head of the race here at the moment.
Oh, Dan Martin. Love this guy's style. He really wants a stage win as well as a high overall finish in this race. He comes in just about 2 minutes down in the general classification.
Up to 13% here. Now Dan Martin, first race to Grand Tour back at the Vuelta in 2009. He's really hitting his stride here late in the 2011 season, has the form, the fitness, and the confidence that he hopes will carry him to a top 10. Hasn't really been in a position to ride for the general classification at a Grand Tour until now, and here he is on stage 9 trying to take advantage of the steep slopes up to La Covatia and the second summit finish.
He really prefers racing in the second half of the season, July, August, September, because his allergies are much more of a factor for him in the first part of the season. So the Vuelta is the perfect Grand Tour for him.
Vincenzo Nibali at just 16 seconds back on the general classification. Looking back, seeing who may respond from the other GC contenders, and right now Nibali is opening up some daylight as this is back to the race leader, Joaquim Rodriguez.
This is a bit of a free-for-all. Rodriguez not able to follow anything. He's just buried in this group, out of sight, out of mind. He's got Menchov right on his right, but other men launching off the front.
So Dan Martin about to get some company with Vincenzo Nibali coming up to his back wheel. These are the first two on the road.
Remember the first summit finish at Sierra Nevada, Martin Martin ended up out-sprinting all the contenders for third. There were 2 men off the front, Moreno and Sorensen, and then it was Martin who out-sprinted Joaquin Rodriguez.
4K left to go. Reduced group here that includes the red jersey. Menchoff is there. Michele Scarponi is in this group. Yanni Brajkovic is there for Radio Shack. The road will start to ease back in terms of the gradient as they get closer to the finish, and inside the final K, it'll be just about 6%. Sergio Pardilla, the Spaniard for Movistar, riding with Kevin Sealdreers. These two are behind Dan Martin and Vincenzo Nibali on the road. This is the front of the stage. Martin in the white, Nibali in the green. Time bonuses at the finish. 20, 12, and 8 seconds again for the first 3.
Remember that Nibali started the day 45 seconds down. You could pick up 20 seconds just with a win. Dan Martin, the winner of the Tour of Poland last year, didn't quite pull it off again this year just before the Vuelta started.
12-second lead for Martin and Nibali on Sealdreers, and also Pardilla, the second twosome on the road. And this is back to the red jersey group and the other GC contenders. Sealdreers and Pardilla here. 3K to go for the front men. Joaquin Rodriguez in danger of losing that red jersey here on stage 9.
Big time danger when you have Nibali up off the front of the group. Nibali is probably the most dangerous guy to him for the overall classification.
It's Mikel Nieve just in front of Joaquin Rodriguez.
Things flattening out a bit here at the top, so definitely not as good a place for these guys to get a big gap.
Liquigas has already won a stage with Peter Sagan. Vincenzo Nibali is thinking about the general classification in here and potentially taking the red jersey going to the time trial tomorrow.
Chris Froome on the front there as they've just brought back Pardilla and Sealdreers. Froome on the front for Wiggins, who's sitting second.
And Michele Scarponi, who was at the front of the race a little bit earlier on the climb, he's now slipped to the back of this group that contains the red jersey.
A little bit of a crosswind out of the right, pushing everybody over in the left gutter.
Final 3 kilometers with Nibali ahead of Dan Martin.
It's going to take a while to grow your hair out after you do that to it.
Vincenzo Nibali, the defending Vuelta champion, trying to ride back into red. Wiggins now second wheel in this group. Pardilla fourth. There's Joaquin Rodriguez in the middle. He's got Dennis Menchoff on his wheel. But this is back out front. As the road levels off for a moment, this is part of the stair-stepping nature of this climb. Dan moved out on the bonus time. It cost him the red jersey, but he has a chance to take it for the first time at this year's race here on the summit finish of stage 9. That's because this man, Joaquin Rodriguez,
he's in trouble. He is in trouble. He is dropped. Froome has cracked the race leader.
Mikel Nieve sitting on his wheel, number 54. Rodriguez thought that perhaps he could win once again today, but those efforts in the first week on the steep uphill finishes of over 20% have taken their toll.
This is what I was talking about yesterday, Steve. When Rodriguez makes such a hard effort one day, you never know how you're going to feel the next. Well, the answer right now is unfolding in front of us.
Nibali sensing the opportunity on the general classification with Rodriguez in trouble. He's getting a gap. He knows there's time bonuses at the line, so he's riding hard. Wiggins trying to minimize the damage and put himself in position with the time trial coming up tomorrow. Joaquin Rodriguez, though, may be a short stay in red because he is losing time to his other GC contenders.
It's all but lost it here today, Steve. I don't know how he can maintain the red jersey. Dan Martin trying to get the biggest win of his career. He did win a stage and the overall at the Tour of Poland last year, but he's never won a stage of a Grand Tour.
So Nibali and Martin still out front, and the chase furious behind with 2K left to go. So the steepest part of the climb is behind him. It's flatter towards the top. But for Joaquin Rodriguez, look how much time he is losing to Nibali and the others.
Really just a fabulous job done by Chris Froome for Brad Wiggins as he sat on the front of the chase group in the left gutter, giving Wiggins shelter and blowing everybody else up. And Wiggins has made it up now.
Brad Wiggins has come up with Bauke Mollema for Rabobank.
And Chris Froome is still back there hanging on after all that work he did.
And then you have...
It looked like Jurgen Vandenbroek also was in there.
But Brad Wiggins thought his big day may be tomorrow in the time trial, but he is making a big acceleration here today with Mollema on his wheel. Dan Martin is also there. Jurgen Vandenbroek.
Juan Jose Cobo in there for the Geox squad. So Menchov and Sastre did not make it for Geox, but Cobo did.
It's Chris Sorensen for Saxo Bank. Number 104 for Leopard Trek is Maxime Montfort. Steven Kruijswijk is the Rabobank rider just behind Mikel Nieve, who's at the front in the orange and black for Euskaltel. So it's Nieve with Kruijswijk, the red jersey of Joaquin Rodriguez. They're a ways back down the road. This is Brad Wiggins at the front of the stage, followed by Bauke Mollema of Rabobank, JJ Cobo of Geox, then Dan Martin, Vincenzo Nibali, Chris Froome a little bit further back, the teammate of Wiggins on Team Sky.
Wiggins comes into the day 20th at 143. This is a big ride for him.
This is Jurgen Vandenbroek, number 127 for the Omega Formulato team.
He's in a bit of trouble coming off of that group. And look at Rodriguez popping even worse. His entire Vuelta looks to be evaporating right here on this summit.
He's going to lose time with the time trial tomorrow. He may be losing the whole race here today. There's his teammate Daniel Moreno in the King of the Mountains jersey that he's also losing today.
Well, Moreno now will have to tell Rodriguez, get on my wheel. I don't care how bad you feel.
Brad Wiggins, 143 back of Rodriguez on the general classification as the day started. He has moved to the front of the race. They have 38 seconds on Rodriguez and his teammate Moreno. Again, Wiggins, Mollema, Cobo, Dan Martin, Vincenzo Nibali. Among the riders at the front, they've had Chris Froome and Jurgen Vandenbroek with them. Chasing Moreno, Rodriguez trying to claw their way back up there.
Oh, Rodriguez just has nothing. His body is so bad on the bike right now, all over it. Wiggins, Mollema, Cobo, Nibali. Froome on the back, and the second to last rider. Couldn't pick him out there.
Brad Wiggins, though, making his first big move of this year's Vuelta. And this group putting time in to the race leader, Joaquin Rodriguez.
Remember, Wiggins crashed out of the Tour de France. He had been lighter than he'd ever been in his racing career going into the Tour. I talked with Bobby Julich of Team Sky earlier this race, and he says Wiggins is 2 kilos lighter than he was at the Tour de France.
That broken collarbone took a little while to heal, but good enough for him to come back and race his first ever Vuelta this year.
I don't care how hard Moreno works back there. Look at this freight train up on the mountain up ahead with Wiggins just drilling it. These guys are going to be gone, and Rodriguez is going to say bye-bye to red.
One of the riders they have lost from this group is Jurgen Vandenbroek of Omega Formulato, who was climbing well earlier, but he's gone. It's now Wiggins out front, Mollema second, Cobo third, Vincenzo Nibali fourth.
And it's Dan Martin. That's the rider I didn't pick out from up above. In this special jersey that he's wearing.
Almost 5 hours in now. They're coming up towards the finish. Wiggins, Mollema, Cobo, Nibali, Martin, and Froome. This is the front of the race. Time bonuses of 2012 and 8 seconds for the first 3 across the line. The red jersey losing time. Just about 45 seconds back after almost 5 hours. They're 200 meters from the finish at La Covatilla.
And Martin's got a very good uphill kick. This is his to lose, Steve.
Dan Martin coming to the front. Mollema responding. Wiggins is not going to challenge, and it looks like Dan Martin is going to ride away with it. Dan Martin, the Irishman, can sit up at the line because he's got the stage win on the 9th day of the Vuelta.
Joaquim Malema second, Juan Jose Cobo third, then Wiggins, then Froome, then Nibali. Things closing down a little bit there to Nibali at the end.
Jurgen van den Broek there crossing over for Omega Formulato. Thought he might be up there a lot closer to the front.
He almost had it. He just popped right at the end. And way back down here, 200 meters to go. The former holder of the red jersey.
His teammate Daniel Moreno taking him up to the line. But it's all slipping away for Joaquim Rodriguez. So Joaquim Rodriguez will lose about 49 seconds. And we'll sort out the general classification here after the 9th day as we come back on the post-race report presented by SRAM. In fashion right now. Second half of the season is usually where he shines and proving his form, fitness, and overall confidence at the end of stage number 9 as he wins the stage sprinting to the victory on the summit finish of La Covatilla. We'll see the new general classification when we come back on the post-race report right after this. Joaquim Malema is our new leader by just 1 second over the former leader, Joaquim Rodriguez. Vincenzo Nibali has gained time. He's within 10 seconds of the red jersey. Jurgen van den Broek, who was with that front group, but started to fade on the final climb. He rounds out the top 5, but look at that. You go all the way down to Kevin Seeldreers at the bottom of the page, and everybody well within 1 minute of the top of the standings. Dan Martin, the winner, his 3rd victory of the season.
And it's a big one.
They said yesterday the finish was a little too steep for him, so put more of a bullseye on today's 2nd summit finish of the race and came through in a big way. Garmin Cervelo's Dan Martin captured the 2nd summit finish of the Vuelta on stage number 9. That victory further rattled the general classification, moving Martin up into the top 10 and giving us our 6th different leader of the race. Bauke Mollema of Rabobank now leading Joaquim Rodriguez by 1 second, Vincenzo Nibali within 10 seconds, and 12 riders altogether within 1 minute of the red jersey. Host venue, about a 2 hours drive west of Madrid, 50 miles east of the Portuguese border. The riders will head south and then back north in a clockwise direction on this very long course.
This course is exposed to wind. The first half trending uphill, the second half trending downhill, but no major amount of altitude change on either direction. It's really the length of the course and the fact that it's an individual time trial where the specialists can shine and the climbers will suffer.
Cathedral serving as the backdrop in Salamanca for the start of the race. They are already underway on a breezy, hot day, temperature in the low 90s. And these are the current standings. Tony Martin absolutely crushing it, leading Fabian Cancellara by almost a minute and a half. Taylor Phinney, the American, went out early. He rounds out the top 3 early on in the TT. This was earlier today. For BMC, Taylor Phinney, who has really been targeting the Stage 10 individual time trial, says he's been feeling better as the race has unfolded, going all out today to put in a good time. And he was the 3rd rider out today, so didn't have a lot of times to measure his own effort by, but still put in a very solid result.
I spoke with him yesterday, Steve, and he actually said he feels better now than he felt the first few days of the race. He's starting to get into his own, set the early best time of the race.
Fabian Cancellara, world time trial champion, sharpening his skills for the upcoming World Championships in Copenhagen in just a couple of weeks. He's been doing a lot of the work in the field for his teammates for Leopard Trek in the first week of the race, so we'll see how much that may have taken off of his time trialing power, but certainly a course that suits him today.
It's a great course for Cancellara, the 4-time world time trial champion, as well as the reigning Olympic champion. And he bested Taylor Phinney by 6 seconds at that point of the race.
And then the guy who would blow them both out of the water, Tony Martin. He is solely focused on the upcoming World Championships. He's riding for a rainbow jersey and looking like he's on top form right now.
There's Tony Martin coming into the finish. He would set a blistering time, almost 1.5 minutes faster than Cancellara, and he looks to be the only potential guy to dethrone Cancellara at the Worlds.
And this Denis Menchov, the 2-time Vuelta a Espana winner, he is out on the road. Last year at the Vuelta, in the long-time trial on stage 17, Menchov finished second on the day to Peter Velits, who is not in this year's race. And now back to the start house for Michele Scarponi. He attacked late on the final climb yesterday, but into the wind, he suffered for it and wound up losing some time.
He said he felt good earlier on the climb, so he wanted to go for it. But then later on, things all started coming apart for him.
Scarponi now 2 minutes back on the general classification. We are inside the final 20 riders who will start today.
Scarponi's a reasonably proficient time trial rider. In the Giro d'Italia back in May, he was 17th in the 26-kilometer time trial, so significantly shorter than today. But he did lose 1.5 minutes in that event.
All the riders in the top 30 today starting in 2-minute intervals. Everybody else earlier started in 1-minute increments. Menchov losing some time in the first week at the Vuelta, but he's sort of been chipping away and clawing back some of that time. Problem is, throughout this entire year, he's never looked to be at his best. He suffered from some illnesses and some injuries from a few crashes earlier in the season. As you see, the top of the standings right now being paced by Tony Martin. But Menchov, just when you boil it down, has never recaptured the form that carried him to the Giro title in 2009 and his 2 Vuelta titles a few years before that.
He hasn't even had a single win since winning the Vuelta in 2009.
Always dangerous, though, in a long, pure specialist kind of time trial. Sylvain Chavanel. I'll check that. That's the wrong graphic. That
looks like
Radio
Yanni
Shack.
Brajkovic to me, actually, as he's out on course at this point. And the man's got a pretty good time trial. He's a very small guy, a great climber, but he puts it together in the TT, a 2-time Slovenian national champion. And by the way, he's only participated in his national time trial championships twice in his career, won it both times.
Yanni Brajkovic probably would like a hillier time trial, but it's windy out there today, and that does suit him. He can ride the TT in the wind. As we're back to Menchov. Denis Menchov, the only multiple-time Vuelta winner in the field, and in fact, one of only 2 former winners of the race in this year's edition, along with the defending champion Vincenzo Nibali. Menchov won his 2 Vueltas in 05 and 07. Radio Shack rider who came in as a co-GC leader with Andreas Kloden. However, more of the responsibility on the general classification has fallen on Brajkovic's shoulders because Kloden has lost a lot of time in the first week. Yanni himself lost more time on the summit finish of stage 9 than he thought he would, dropping just about 1.5 minutes to the Brad Wiggins group. So Brajkovic hoping to make up some of that today in the time trial.
Brajkovic comes in today 2:10 down in 20th place, but his teammate Thiago Machado has set the 2nd best time at the intermediate split, so they'll have a little communication through the radios talking about the course.
Brajkovic likes to ride in the wind, and there is definitely some wind out there on the course today. This is a pure specialist course. Brajkovic would probably prefer a few more hills be thrown in to suit his liking. Chris Froome and the Team Sky Rider yesterday did a lot of work in support of Brad Wiggins on that summit finish, and he hung in there till the very end.
Brad definitely was buying dinner last night after the incredible ride Froome did on the climb in the crosswind, and just really broke the main contenders group apart with his effort, and then Wiggins finished it off.
Now back to Brajkovic. Hoping for a late season bounce back for this Radio Shack team that was so demoralized at the Tour de France, with everybody crashing seemingly every other day.
Brajkovic picked up the win of the time trial stage of the Criterium du Dauphiné last year. And even though I wouldn't consider him to be a specialist in the time trial, he's a very good time trialist for a general classification rider.
Brajkovic went to the States just a couple of weeks ago to ride in support of Levi Leipheimer at the Tour of Utah, then made the journey back overseas for the Vuelta. One of the only guys to do that. So while most other riders were in Europe preparing for the Vuelta, Yanni had to do much more traveling coming into this race. This is Luis Leon Sanchez wearing the jersey of the Spanish national time trial champion, going through the time check at 30K, about a minute back.
Brajkovic on his trip in Utah helped Levi win the overall at the Tour of Utah, as well as he took 3rd overall himself. Actually, I had a chance to speak with him a couple of times there, and he said he was completely over the effects of his crash at the Tour de France, which took him out, broke his collarbone, gave him a concussion, and he was fine. He was flying on the descents, no fear, back to normal.
Vincenzo Nibali, for one, is saying Wiggins is the outright favorite, maybe not to win the time trial, but to be the highest placed among the general classification riders and to take the red jersey at the end of the day.
Yes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
With the sweat just rolling off his face. He is dialed in. He knows how important this 47-kilometer ride is.
Probably put in almost 2 hours worth of warm-up before rolling out of the start house. Wants to be totally primed and ready to put in a massive effort. Maybe the ride of his life right here.
This is a perfect course for him. It's a good distance. And the time he took back on the climb yesterday puts him in position to perhaps be the new leader by the end of the day.
You can still see the sweat just running off of his face. Joining Marzio Brussain out on course at this point.
And the Movistar rider, former Italian national time trial champion, a guy who's won a couple of different individual time trials at the Giro in his career and has also finished in the top 10 overall at the Vuelta.
I think Wiggins was climbing better than I've ever seen him climb before in his career. That includes his 4th place overall at the Tour de France a couple of years ago.
Now, this may be one of the wild cards in the GC. Aymar Zubeldia, the 34-year-old Basque rider for Radio Shack. This is a rider who on 2 separate occasions has finished 5th at the Tour de France, and he's been in the top 10 twice at the Vuelta. Good time trialist, and he's been holding his own on the climbs in the first week of the Vuelta a Espana this year, currently sitting in 9th position, inside of 1 minute back of the leader.
He won the Tour de l'Inde in France August 10th through 14th not long ago, and won the prologue in that event as well.
So Aymar Zubeldia is off. We're inside the final 10 riders of the day. Nibali, Rodriguez, and Mollema will be the last 3 down the start ramp at the time trial in Salamanca in just a short time. Team, a guy who wore the red jersey of overall race leader early in the first week.
Yes.
26-year-old former Danish national time trial champion from 2010.
This is a guy who really has a lot riding on this time trial because he is one of the better time trialists in the general classification hunt. Looks like he's got a mechanical here right out of the start, Steve.
Wow.
Problem with the chain, having to soft pedal to get it back on the front chain ring. He's got it going, and he's back on the pedals.
I'll remember all the issues we saw at the beginning of the team time trial. This is the first issue of any kind we've seen here at the individual TT.
He was one of the members of the winning team time trial team in stage number 1.
And Tiago Machado of the Radio Shack team at 30K, second best time, 51 seconds behind Tony Martin. So consider Radio Shack a team that came into the Vuelta with co-GC leaders in Andreas Klöden and Yanni Brajkovic. Klöden has lost a lot of time. Brajkovic is still there, but now you have the surprising performance by Jaimar Zubeldia, who's in the top 10, and Tiago Machado, who led the Radio Shack team in the GC at the Giro. Now he's putting in a good TT on stage 10 today. Chris Froome. Luis Leon Sanchez, Spanish national time trial champion, coming up to the finish in Salamanca.
Sanchez, a multi-time Spanish national time trial champion. He's been setting some of the better times out in the intermediate time checks. And it looks like he's up for a pretty good finish here, Steve.
Just over 2 minutes behind Tony Martin and his blistering time that is going to be hard to touch.
Pretty amazing when you see Sanchez coming across in fourth, 2 minutes down.
Jurgen Vandenbroek, 28-year-old Belgian for Omega Pharma Lotto. Former under-23 world time trial champion, coming back from a crash at the Tour de France this year, hoping to challenge for the podium at the Vuelta. He's been climbing very well, although lost some time in the final kilometers yesterday, but right now sitting 5th on the GC, about half a minute out. As we move back up to Brad Wiggins. Will this rider from Team Sky be the new red jersey at the end of the day? That's what he and a lot of other people are thinking as he rides 15 minutes in. Vuelta champion Vincenzo Nibali. Last year in the individual time trial on stage 17, Nibali did not factor in the overall result. He finished outside the top 10, but it was the stage that moved him back into the red jersey to stay, as he would hold on to the lead all the way to Madrid to win his first Vuelta a España crown. Very solid, if not spectacular, time trialist. Certainly not a specialist, but a guy who, when he needs a good TT, can deliver.
Yeah, he was 11th in the Giro TT earlier this year. I mean, he's a solid rider for the general classification men, and he's certainly way better than guys like Rodriguez.
Rodriguez will start next, and then Bauke Mollema, the final two down the start ramp, as we slide back to Brad Wiggins. Wiggins, winner of the Criterium du Dauphiné. Has a couple other wins this year as well.
That was really the biggest win of the entire history of Team Sky when he won the Criterium du Dauphiné. It was a huge milestone for them.
Jakob Fuglsang, or Leopard Trek team that really had their brightest moments in the first 3 days. They won the team time trial to open the Vuelta in Benidorm. Then it was Fuglsang who wore the red jersey before passing it over to his teammate Daniele Bonatti.
At that point, they had it stacked, the top 4 places in the general classification. Curiously, they decided not to really marshal all their resources, chase down the breakaway when Pablo Lastras went up the road. And their men moved down to 5th place and beyond after that stage.
Well, here he is, Perito. In the race he likes least, the time trial. Joaquim Rodriguez wearing green as the leader of the points competition. And right now it's about minimizing the damage. Last year lost over 6 minutes to the winner of the time trial at the Vuelta, and to Nibali alone he lost over 4 minutes in that long TT at the end of the race.
Carried that unfortunate luck into País Vasco earlier this year, where he went into the final TT tied for the lead with Klöden and Sanchez, and he lost 2 minutes to Klöden in just 15 miles. Incredible work being done by Brad Wiggins out on the course with the best first intermediate time check, going 1 second faster than Tony Martin. So he is really showing that he came to win this time trial.
He needs to be 51 seconds faster than Vincenzo Nibali at the end of the day. As we move back to the start house for our final rider of 185. Overall race leader, the Dutch rider from Rabobank, Bok Mollema.
30 segundos.
The 6th different man to wear the red jersey in the first 10 days of this year's Vuelta.
Extremely fresh after his taking the jersey yesterday, but the time trial not his strong suit like the climbs are. Still, he's had the best season of his career, and he's highly motivated to defend this.
Big problem for him, he's so inconsistent in the time trial.
3, 2, 1,
He's been really good, and then he's been really bad. But he says the problem for him today, he's never raced a time trial this long, 47 kilometers, so kind of uncharted territory.
Often what happens with guys that have not raced long time trials under pressure is they start too hard, and they do okay like through that first time check, but they end up blowing themselves out. Rodriguez has that problem, and they lose precipitous amount of time at the late part of the race.
Here's Brad Wiggins catching his 2-minute man. It's like Daniel Moreno.
It's Martin, actually, the Garmin Cervelo rider in the mountain
special
jersey.
Yeah,
he got it this time, but Martin not a great time trialist either. And you can see Wiggins just flying right on by.
So Wiggins not only challenging for the red jersey, but challenging for the win on the time trial overall, the way he's going. This is Carlos Sastre of Geox coming to his finish.
Looks a little upset about the fact that another rider was there with him at the end, maybe getting in his way. But this really hasn't shown to be Carlos Sastre's Vuelta.
A little uphill on the road here for Brad Wiggins, going through the last intermediate. The fastest time of the day. And that is really saying something, because Tony Martin has been scorching all the time checks, leading Fabian Cancellara of all people by 1.5 minutes at the finish. Yanni Brajkovic at 30K.
Brajkovic just 50 seconds out of it there. The time of Tony Martin at that second intermediate time check, second best. Great ride by Brajkovic. A little surprising to see him struggle yesterday, losing some time on the climb. It really was a type of climb that he expected himself, and I expected him to shine on.
There were a few guys who were surprising yesterday. Jürgen Vandenbroek lost some time late in that stage. That was surprising as well, as we're back to Brad Wiggins' Sky teammate, Chris Froome. Now, Team Sky looking for a better Vuelta this year than what they had last year, as this is Thiago Machado. I checked that Jaimar Zubeldia, who again is in the top 10 on the general classification and sitting within 1 minute of the leader. Now, Zubeldia does have some good TT skills, and we weren't necessarily looking to him for the general classification when the Vuelta began, but things change out there on the road, and now he has a shot for a top 10 if he can put in a good TT here and then hang in the mountains in the final 2 weeks.
The way he's been riding.
Yanni Brajkovic. Brajkovic, 5th fastest time, just inside of 2 minutes back of the leader, Tony Martin of HTC High Road.
Cancellara still sits in second. The American Taylor Phinney in third. Thiago Machado, Brajkovic's teammate, sits in fourth.
Brajkovic has threatened Tony Martin's lead at the finish.
Michele Scarpone here, losing a bunch of time.
Last 2 days could really hurt his GC chances. Attacking on the final climb yesterday, but fading near the finish. Lost some time to the overall contenders, and now inside the top 40 in the TT today. And he'll be 4.5 minutes behind Tony Martin.
That's a pretty big loss for Scarpone.
Italian did altitude training in Livigno back in his home country prior to the Vuelta. A couple of disappointing days. Stages 9 and 10 for the Lampre man. Now Nibali. Now speaking of altitude training, Nibali spent July at a high altitude training camp on the San Pellegrino Pass in his home country of Italy. Checked out some of the key mountain stages prior to the Vuelta, although he hasn't seen them all.
He's probably seen a lot more of them than Mollema has seen. Being that this is Mollema's first time racing here, but finds himself in that leader's jersey. An incredible ride by him yesterday. He was actually really frustrated. He actually said he was angry with the finish, with himself at the finish yesterday, because he didn't pay attention and missed out on a potential win.
He said he was looking the wrong way when Dan Martin sprinted on his right-hand side. He didn't see him. And also misjudged the fact that it was a downhill run there to the finish right at the line.
Wiggins apparently started out a little bit hot, putting the best time check in the first split, losing some time, actually losing 19 seconds between the first and the second split to Martin.
That's really Chris Froome of Team Sky riding into second place behind Tony Martin. 59 seconds back of the HTC High Road man, but what a tremendous performance coming into the day. 14th on the GC at 103 back, so he's likely to move up in a big way as his teammate Brad Wiggins is now approaching the finish in Salamanca.
Froome actually started out perfectly, 5th at the first time check, then he was 3rd at the second time check, and coming across the finish, second best so far. It's the perfect way to do it. If you start out too hard and fade, you'll end up with a slower overall time rather than starting slow and gaining time throughout the time checks.
Daniel Moreno, almost 4 minutes back, 30K in.
He knew that was coming long before he threw a leg over the saddle today. But still, he's had an incredible race so far. He's been in several different jerseys, including winning a stage early on as well.
Now the man so many have pointed to as the likely candidate to inherit the red jersey by the end of the day, Brad Wiggins, is coming in towards the finish in Salamanca. He had the fastest time at the first intermediate checkpoint, 19 seconds slower than the best time at the second check. 55.54 is the best time currently at the finish, held by Tony Martin. This is back at the 30K split. Jurgen Vandenbroek coming through. Also not a good performance, 2.5 minutes off the pace.
Really, the question for me right now is, what is Wiggins going to do in this final section of the course? Because he started out so incredibly fast, but then he lost some time in that second section. Is he going to somehow hold it together here at the end and ride into the overall race lead?
So coming up on the final kilometer, he's not going to beat Tony Martin's time. And he may be outside his teammate, Chris Froome.
Chris Froome could ride himself onto the podium in this time trial. If everything goes his way, he could ride into the overall lead, which was what we expected Wiggins to be doing. They came into the day just 3 seconds apart. Wiggins 60 seconds down, Froome 63 seconds down.
And Chris Froome hit the finish line in second place, 59 seconds behind Tony Martin, our current leader. This is that uphill in the final kilometer leading the finish.
This little uphill really stings a man at this point when he's completely buried himself out on course. They have to hold a little bit in reserve to get up this hill quickly.
Did the quick start hurt Brad Wiggins? Here he comes to the line. The final 200 meters now. Now he's gone outside his teammate Chris Froome. So he will not be the leader nor the top Team Sky rider at the time trial today. He's right now in third at 122 back. So Froome will move ahead of him on the general classification.
Definitely. Brad started a little bit hard. You can see just how cracked he is here at the finish. Froome was also extremely spent. Both of these guys gave it everything. But Wiggins started too hard. There's no doubt in my mind. Even the experience of Brad Wiggins can still make a mistake on a long individual time trial. It's so critical not to overcook the beginning.
Outside the top 80 for Dan Martin. Interesting to note, coming into the day, Martin was 12th in the GC, followed by Wiggins and Froome, the two teammates for Team Sky, but they changed around the start order because they didn't want two teammates starting back-to-back with Wiggins and Froome. So they slotted Martin in between those two.
Yeah, they always do that. Do not want to have the opportunity for teammates to catch each other out on a time trial course.
Wiggins, though, passing Martin out on the road. 15K for Vincenzo Nibali. And to the man in red, Balk Mollema.
Mollema still attacking these climbs with a lot of gusto, in and out of the saddle, trying to vary the position. Also trying to keep the speed up. But it's a pretty aggressive style for a long time trial. And I think it's definitely going to hurt him in the latter portion where he has some more wide open flat sections.
Talking about Rodriguez a moment ago. Last year when he lost all that time in the time trial, that was basically it. But this year, there are still 4 summit finishes in the final 2 weeks. So there is an opportunity for him to recover the time he's going to lose today. Problem is, if he loses too much, some of the other guys ahead of him can just mark his wheels.
I don't see Rodriguez being a factor for the overall win after today, especially after yesterday. If he had gained time yesterday, then you could have thought he had a chance. I think at this point, Rodriguez is going to have to look for stage wins and other options in this bike race.
Used to be that there would be a long time trial in the middle of every Grand Tour, but the trend these days is to put him more towards the back, to be more decisive in the final week of racing. So sort of unusual to have one here on stage 10 at 47 kilometers long and at 30K. Look at Joaquim Rodriguez.
I think this is going to make for an interesting dynamic in the bike race, because we are going to have guys who lose time in this time trial but are still close in the general classification, and they're going to have to come out fighting in the other mountain days and try and get it back somehow.
And this is Jakob Fuglsang coming up to his finish in Salamanca.
This is a critical ride for him because he could be challenging for the red jersey here, Steve.
One of the top time trialists among the general classification riders, maybe second only to Brad Wiggins in pure TT ability among the GC guys.
Seconds slipping away from him, 137 down. That's going to put him close to the podium.
Now started the day in 7th position, 37 seconds back of the red jersey. Jakob Fuglsang very much in the picture here. As we move back to Joaquim Rodriguez, who was over 3 minutes back at the last checkpoint.
Rodriguez knows that this is not a good day for him, but this general classification battle, to me, Steve, is looking very interesting. Chris Froome with an incredible ride, second so far at the finish line, beating his teammate Wiggins by 23 seconds. That could put Froome into the overall lead.
Now look at this. Balk Mollema coming up onto the back of Joaquim Rodriguez. They started 2 minutes apart.
Mollema continues to have a pretty good ride here. Been attacking this course. Mollema, a lot of movement in the bike and the body, but still keeping the speed up at a reasonable rate.
That always helps to see your 1 or 2 minute man in front of you. It's that extra incentive because typically you're by yourself in an individual time trial. So when you have a marker, something to chase, that adds a little incentive.
You got to feel for Joaquin Rodriguez. The man just struggles so much in these time trials.
At this point in his career, what can he do? Because he is so deficient in the time trial, and obviously it just kills him when it comes to the Grand Tours, where otherwise he's a legitimate contender. It's got to be so frustrating. What else can he do to make himself better at this?
Rodriguez needs to spend half of his training time on his time trial bike in the full position, working on getting the power from that position on the bike. He's still never going to be great at it, but he needs to focus on it so much, and he just doesn't do that. A lot of guys, when they have a weakness, they ignore it. He needs to embrace it and figure out how to turn it around.
Vincenzo Nibali coming up towards the finish. If he can defend his Vuelta title this year, he'd be the first Italian to ever win back-to-back Vueltas and the first man from any nation to successfully defend the Vuelta crown since Roberto Haras back in 2004. But he knows it's much more difficult this year to win than it was last year. A deeper, more well-rounded field of challengers here in this 2011 edition.
5K to go for him. That's just 3.1 miles. Rodriguez now showing that he actually has the power to ride better than he has been, but he's just having trouble with the pacing. He's got a marker in front of him now, and he's able to ride the same pace at this point of Mollema.
When he knows how much time he is conceding. We were 3 minutes at the last checkpoint. Start of the day 1 second behind Mollema in the race for that red jersey. He will have to turn his attention to the 4 summit finishes coming up in the final 2 weeks, and Rodriguez himself thought that the mountains in the 3rd and final week will be more decisive than the mountains they've already climbed. Yeah, but he also knew this time trial was going to be big too.
Yeah, this time trial is going to be the most decisive day of the bike race for him. There's no doubt.
It was in 2001, and it was won by David Miller.
This individual time trial not good for the Katusha squad. Moreno came into the day in 6th. He's losing a boatload of time, and Rodriguez came in 2nd and losing a bunch of time.
So we're getting down to it. The battle among the top GC riders here in the time trial. Jürgen Vandenbroek next up to the finish line outside the top 30. Looks like Tony Martin is going to go unchallenged for the stage win today. Jürgen Vandenbroek almost 4 minutes back of his time.
Vandenbroek actually saying he's happy that he's just able to race in this race after his nasty crash at the Tour de France.
Fredrik Kessiakoff, the 31-year-old Swede who won the Tour of Austria earlier this summer.
It's a nice ride by Kessiakoff. He comes from the mountain bike discipline, so he's pretty good at the time trial. That's the first we've seen of him. Only 2:18 down.
4th in the GC, and inside of 20 seconds out as the day started. Comes from a mountain biking background, 4-time Swedish national champion. Just turned pro on the road 2 years ago in 2009. Here's Nibali. And Nibali could have already ridden himself into the red jersey earlier in week 1. Remember that stage where Liquigas had 4 of the first 5. There at the end of the stage, it was only Pablo Lastras of Movistar who worked into the mix. It was a stage won by his Liquigas teammate, Peter Sagan, and Nibali, because of some confusion there at the finish, finished outside the time bonus.
And that 3rd place time bonus wouldn't have gotten him in the lead, but if he had won, the time bonus would have.
Mollema, last man on the road in the red jersey, trying to hold his own.
5K to go, and still a respective ride from him. Yeah, he's going to lose some minutes, but nothing like Rodriguez did.
He's already
just seen it slip away.
All right, now Nibali coming up to the finish. It's that uphill, 150 meters to go to the line. Outside the top 10 for Nibali. Knows how important this result is. And he'll slide over 224 back of Tony Martin.
Not quite the ride he would have wanted. He would have liked to have been 5th through 10th in this time trial. So not a sparkling performance, but still keeps him well in the hunt in the general classification battle.
So whereas last year, the long time trial at the end of the Vuelta moved Nibali into the red jersey permanently in the race, he will not move into red at the end of the time trial this year here on stage 10. Still 2 weeks and 4 summit finishes left to go here in the 66th Vuelta a Espana. Mollema, race leader. Just 2 guys left to finish now. It'll be Mollema, then Joaquim Rodriguez. Mollema, 6 different men to wear the red jersey. 7 different teams have won stages in the first 9 days, and we have had 5 first-time Grand Tour stage winners at this year's Vuelta too.
I can tell you, when you look at the statistics like that, it tells you how unpredictable and exciting this race has been so far. Different men showing their noses, winning stages, putting on the jersey. Lots going on. Well, but he actually had a decent ride.
So 2 riders left to finish. This man, Mollema, and Joaquim Rodriguez. Chris Froome of Team Sky will be the new overall race leader at the end of the day, so he'll take the red jersey with his scintillating performance. And a surprising one as he outdueled his teammate and the favorite among the GC guys coming in today, Brad Wiggins.
Talk about an eye-opening ride by Chris Froome. I don't think anybody would have expected him to put that performance in, but Mollema, this man is fighting hard all the way to the line. There is a lot of fight left in him, and he's still going to be in contention for the overall classification after this time trial.
Just outside the top 20. Well, he's been inconsistent in time trials throughout his career, but he puts in a time today that puts him just 3 minutes back of Tony Martin, having passed Joaquim Rodriguez on the road, who is outside the top 70. And almost 5.5 minutes back for Joaquim Rodriguez. So Tony Martin of HTC High Road wins the time trial. Chris Froome of Team Sky will be the new overall leader. And we'll come back with the post-race report presented by SRAM right after this here on Universal Sports. Team Sky is the new leader. This, the stage podium for the individual time trial, and no question about the top man on the day, Tony Martin of HTC High Road in the team's final Grand Tour, comes through with a very convincing performance to win on the day. Chris Froome, the leader by 12 seconds over Jakob Fuglsang. Brad Wiggins, the teammate of the race leader, 20 seconds off the pace. And you have 5 guys basically within about a half a minute of the race lead. Vincenzo Nibali there, 31 seconds back, sitting in 4th.